order this meeting of the Select Board of the Town of Groton for Monday, September 9th. As we typically do, we're going to open up with announcements and a review of the agenda, followed by a public comment period. We then have the Town Manager's Report, which has 7 items this evening. We will touch on the Select Board's agenda schedule, review a first draft of the Fall Town Meeting warrant, discuss potentially the charge for the Major Initiative Planning Committee based on the Finance Committee recommendations and input. We will discuss and potentially approve a fuel efficient vehicle policy, We will get an update from the Town Manager on our policy review, and we will discuss and potentially approve a 1-day beer and wine license for 3 Common Inc., doing business as the Bull Run Restaurant for a wedding to be held on September 14th at Sunset Farm. And then we will approve the proposed schedule of the Select Board for the fall. We have other business and then updates on any of our ongoing issues. As always, we have our space for liaison reports, and then we have 1 set of minutes from August 26th from our regular meeting. I will open it up to announcements. Yeah, go ahead, Becky.
Thank you. I just wanted to note the wonderful article that was in the Groton Herald about the 2 high school students, Lindsay Koza and Ethan McNamara, and thank them for the work they did to preserve Groton's earliest written history. And congratulate Michael Latours and the Historical Commission for getting that project done. And just share with the rest of you that, as a side note, that Michael Latours attended one of the Nonprofit Council meetings because he is on the Old Groton Meeting House Committee. And that's where he learned about the opportunity to seek student volunteers through the high school principal Woodlock's weekly newsletter. So that was a striking success all around, and gives me a nice segue into announcing that the Nonprofit Council is going to meet again on Friday, not this week, but the following week, September 20th at 9 a.m. at the Prescott School Community Center. This is for networking and information sharing, and I would just note to anyone who's watching or listening that the Nonprofit Council is just a gathering of representatives of nonprofit organizations in Groton. You don't have to be a member. Anyone who would like to come and represent a nonprofit organization in Groton is welcome. And if you need more information, you can get in touch with me, or I'm sure Dawn could answer your questions. The meeting will be Friday, September 20th from 9 to 10:30 at the Prescott School. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Josh.
Sure. At the last meeting, we had a discussion concerning the release of our select board meeting packets, which we receive prior to our meetings. And I had suggested at the time that people offer us as select board members feedback. The Groton Herald put an article in, as well as an online poll, and I've been receiving a lot of emails, both in the affirmative that they want to see the packets, as well as some to the effect that they don't want to see packets released. So we're taking information from the public, and if anybody would like to weigh in one way or another, please contact us at Town Hall through our select board meeting address or our personal emails, or answer the Groton Herald's online poll, and our addresses are located on the town website if you're looking for them. Thank you.
Just on that issue quickly, Mark and I had just touched base about putting that on the agenda again for next week. So hopefully by then we'll have garnered the input we were looking for.
That's great. Any
other announcements? All right, public comment? Yes.
On August 31st, we lost one of Groton's finest. Lorraine Linden passed away. Her wake was yesterday. And my opinion is she was an invaluable member of the Finance Committee. Her knowledge, her sense of humor, and her input to that committee was just absolutely incredible. And I would like to ask for a minute of silent prayer in memory of Lorraine Linden. Thank you.
thank you for that, Art. She certainly will be missed. Not only was she on the finance committee, she was serving on the Florence Roach Building Committee, and, you know, for those involved, everyone knew her and looked forward to seeing her at meetings. She made spreadsheets seem kind of exciting, which was no small task. Any other public comments? All right, then we'll move on, Mark, to your report.
Thank you, Allison. So the warrant closed on the 29th of August. There are 18 articles that were submitted. We have the public hearing scheduled for next Monday night at 7:15 in joint session with the Finance Committee. As is our practice, after the warrant closes, this is the first meeting, I go through the articles that we received very briefly to get the board ready for next week's meeting. So if you indulge me for a few minutes, I'll go through this and be happy to answer any questions that you have. The first article on the warrant is the prior year bills. My understanding is there will be one for next year, the one for this meeting. I think it's around, what, $200-300? $150, so it's not a big deal. That would probably come out of free cash. With regard to the operating budget, there's going to be two changes as of now to the budget. One will be to seek additional funding for the software that we talked about when the committee came into the department heads. I had estimated it earlier around $20,000. I was told late this afternoon it'll probably be more in the neighborhood of $13,000, so a little bit less. The other change to the budget will be the amount of money we need to raise for debt service for the bonds that the board, the bans that the board signed a couple of weeks ago for the DPW garage and the library roof. That'll total around $74,000. I don't believe there is anything else for the warrant, for the budget, which is good. So usually we have a bunch of line item transfers, nothing this year that we need to worry about. The Water Enterprise Fund, you know they'll be seeking money for that, for the some of their iron and manganese issues that they have. I'll give the board a brief update later on the ongoing issues list on that. But they will be seeking some funding to help them with their engineering for that.
That's just within their own.
Within their own, coming from their excess and deficiency, their water reserve. I believe this article may be withdrawn. I need to talk to Tom Orcutt again on the sewer enterprise, so I don't anticipate any transfer there within the sewer enterprise. Yes, John?
I was a little surprised to see both of those identifying the exact same amount of money that would come out of their funds. I think they both were talking about a couple $100,000.
Yeah, nothing for sewer, I don't think. Where did you see those numbers?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
I thought I saw them right in these pieces.
No, I never put numbers in the articles.
Okay.
So we'll have exact numbers for you next week. With regards to the stabilization fund, the capital stabilization fund, as you see in the summary, is currently $171,958. There might be a little bit more come town meeting time because of accrued interest. I'll be looking for anywhere from $425,000 to $500,000 transfer out of free cash for that, as is our normal practice. I'll have an update for the board on that next week. Within the stabilization fund, you can see the balance is $1.9 million.
Mark, can you just
Yes.
hold one second?
Yes.
Prior to next week's meeting, which is the public hearing, could you please send us a breakdown as soon as possible of what you believe you will be looking for?
In
For
those.
cap stabilization?
Sure.
I think I've seen it previous, but I just want to see where it's at now.
Yep. With regards to the stabilization fund, there's $1.9 million in there. It'll be less than $10,000 that we need to transfer into that, maybe less, depending on what the interest is, to get to the 5% level of our operating budget. So there may not, that article may get withdrawn. We'll have an exact number for you as we get closer to town meeting, maybe even next week. With regards to the Groton Dunstable Stabilization Fund, there's currently a balance in there of $214,000. Their budget next year for their capital budget will require a transfer of $260,000 to cover their proposed capital plan Groton's share for next year. So we'll be recommending a transfer of $260,000 into that fund for their budget for next year, for their capital budget for next year. With regards to the, yes,
Mark, with this one,
Allison?
for all of these, do you look beyond just the coming next year to
No,
kind of start
year to year.
accruing, or it's all
It's all
year to
year to
year?
year. With regards to the, bless you, Connie, with regards to the capital stabilization funds, with regard to the stabilization fund, it's just a 5%, simple math, 5% of our operating budget, we go in there. I think last year we didn't put anything in. Yeah, so, with regards to the crosswalk signage on Main Street, we'll be looking for $15,000 out of free cash for that. That'll be near the middle school. With regards to Article 9, you can see I put a big TBD there, to be determined. That will be if we need, that's a placeholder for the sprinkler system at the Prescott School. As the board will recall, I believe I told you it was my proposal last month to go to the CPC to ask them to place this on the warrant. We're planning on going out to bid on the sprinkler system. We wanted to make sure if we needed additional funding to get it done, we have the ability to go to town meeting. I've been working with Bruce, and we're trying to get the bids open the week before town meeting, so we'll have an exact number on that. So we're in the process of getting that done. I'll update the board as we get closer to town meeting on that. Yes, Allison?
Mark, just on that one, it's
Yep.
like halfway down through the summary.
Yep.
Over on the right, it says the town has now designed the system and gone back out to bid.
Yeah, by the time that warrant gets printed, that will be a true
If
statement.
we can just correct that, because I don't think the town has designed,
Oh, it's
Yeah,
the
the
front, I
town
got you,
has-
I got you.
you know,
Yep,
contracted or something.
yep, you're right.
Thank you.
Do you mean the town now has a design for the system?
exactly,
Is that
yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Yep, I'll fix that. Thank you, Allison. The update, the assessors maps, cyclical inspections. This article, I'm gonna need some guidance from the board and from the finance committee on this. We're gonna be looking for about $30,000 in this article. Some of it is to update the assessors maps. The other is to start the cyclical inspections. The cyclical inspections need to be done to get us in compliance with the Department of Revenue. We need to have a full measuring list every 5 years, which requires us to go into every property. Now, we did the update of all the records by getting our property record cards done, and we talked about that last week when I gave you the update on the budget. So we've done the measuring list, now we have to do the market inspections to bring it up. So we've made sure all of our records are accurate. Now the next 5 years, we go through and we do those inspections to comply with Department of Revenue guidelines. The guidance I'm gonna need from the board and the finance committee is this is going to be an annual thing, forever. Forever. Now, I wanna get us started in fiscal '20. We can get rid of this article and put it into the assessors budget because we have the excess levy capacity, and start doing that next year, so that we start the inspections in the spring out of the fiscal '20 budget, and then '21, '22, '23, and '24 for the next 5 years. And then it would start all over again, because every 5 years you have to do a full cyclical inspection of every property in town to comply with Department of Revenue guidelines. So the question that I want you to start thinking about, and we can talk about this more next week with the FinCom, is do we want to just put it in the budget now, or do we want to do it as an annual fall town meeting appropriation out of free cash each year? That's what I need the board to think about, but it's going to be an annual cost each year.
Of how much?
Between $30,000 and $35,000, Josh.
And both the updating the maps and the inspections are?
The
are gonna
inspections,
include that, or is
the inspections probably 30,000, around there. The maps this year is about $5,000. So this article asks for 35,000 this fiscal year.
And is that,
The maps will only be a one-time update.
is that a private service that comes in and performs this?
We use Vision, the same people, Josh, that did the property record update. We would use them. They do a great job for us.
So,
Yes, Becky?
I read this. Am I correct that what this means is we just did the whole town, and now we have to get into the pattern of doing the whole town over a course of 5 years.
Yeah, what we did was not a cyclical inspection. What we did was to go in to say, hey, are these property record cards accurate?
Okay,
So now all our property record cards are accurate. Now you have to go in and do what they call a cyclical inspection of each property every year for the next 5 years. You have to get every property done, so you do, a fifth,
So-
a fifth, and a fifth.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
Does that mean that 1/5 of the town each year will have, essentially from the homeowner's standpoint, the same thing will happen as just happened?
Yeah, but it'll be to comply with Department of Revenue guidelines. So now you're into the cyclical inspections. Now that our property record cards are accurate, now we go in and just do the cycle inspections that we're required to do.
But it's,
Similar.
the purpose is still to make sure that the cards are accurate,
And to determine value.
okay?
So-
So approximately 20% of the homeowners in Groton are likely to have somebody come to their door again,
Yes,
and they might have just had it happen
yes,
a year or so in the past.
that is correct.
So I think that we just all need to be aware and really make some effort to continuously kind of educate people that this is happening, because we did have some issues with people not knowing about it before. And we will again, no matter how much we try.
I agree.
But we should continue and when this article comes up at town meeting, which I assume it will unless we make a decision to handle this differently.
It depends on where you do it. It'll either come up under the budget transfers or it'll come up under a separate article. Depends on how the
Right.
board wants to handle it.
I think
and the
we need
FinCom.
to really, make a point of alerting people, because it's gonna seem really
Repetitive.
weird to those people who, get the knock on the door and they just feel like they just did that a few months ago.
John?
I think we can do that better by communicating, say, a week in advance, by letter, to each homeowner that's gonna receive a visit in the following week, and in that letter explain why this may be, both this year and next year, instead of just having somebody show up at the door.
Well, I agree with you, but that would be very expensive. I mean, it's an expense that has not been contemplated in the past, I think, because letters didn't go out before.
No, we have not done that.
So,
I'll work with Jonathan to come up with a strategy to notify the homeowners.
Question. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
is that a new requirement, the cyclical inspection by the DOR? That's a
No,
new-
it's always been around, but we would do it all in 1 year. So now with
All-
Jonathan, all in 1 year?
100%
Yes.
In 1 year.
So what Jonathan wants to do is spread it out over 5 years, so that you are just constantly doing 20%
So
every
that
year.
every 5 years, you can expect
A visit,
someone to come
correct.
visit.
So in theory, we won't need to do an audit with the cards.
No,
Again,
no.
because
Right.
this process of every 5 years, they're gonna come back and they're gonna update those cards for that year, and then they'll do it again, and so the record for any given household, once we get through the first 5 years, will never be further than 5 years. It'll
Yeah,
be 5 years or less,
Which
since
is-
it was valued.
yeah. And I will tell you, I met with Jonathan this afternoon, and we had a long conversation about this today on our weekly meeting. And I said, our database is excellent, isn't it? He goes, our database has never been cleaner. So it's really the work that Jonathan and Megan are doing with their consultants and the Board of Assessors has been phenomenal. I would say our records are in excellent shape. So Jonathan's really done a great job. Okay, so I'd ask the board to think about that. This article is, Tom Delaney and I are submitting it to the board. The purpose of this article is to develop a stormwater strategy. For those of you not aware, the state and the federal government came up with what they call the Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer System Permit, the MS4. And I think it's clear why it's called the MS4, M4S's permit. And it was created to address stormwater sewer systems in municipalities. Because of the number of pollutants such as oil and grease in the roadways and everything, they have new regulations that towns have to comply with to keep their sewer systems clean. That is a very expensive proposition. So we filed all of our proper paperwork last spring to the state to be in compliance with the permit requirements. Now there's an implementation phase on how we're gonna go about cleaning up our system. It is a very, as I said, a very expensive proposition. Some towns in the area, Pepperell and Westford, for example, when they went to address this, they have put a $15 surcharge per quarter on everybody's tax bill. And then that money comes in, and then it goes into what they call either a revolving fund or an enterprise fund, and they use that to fix the stormwater system on an annual basis. The price can be anywhere from $300,000 to $600,000 a year annually to do it. So what Tom Delaney and I want to do, in consulting with our town accountant, is to bring on a consultant to help us develop a strategy, hold public hearings, get input from residents, get input from the select board, get input from the finance committee and others to determine the best way to go about doing this, and hopefully come back to the Springtown meeting with a proposed solution, or maybe next fall. But we are going to have to come up with some sort of funding strategy for this, because it is a requirement. We have no choice. If we don't comply with it, we will be hit with hefty fines from the state. So we want to bring in a consultant to do this work. We've reached out to 2 engineering firms over the last couple of days, and it's anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to help us do this. So we will probably be asking for about 15 grand in this article, transfer from free cash, to bring on a consultant to help us develop the strategy and work with the board moving forward. Yes, Becky?
So when did we learn about this?
We've been working on this. We had our MS4 permit was filed last, was it fall or spring? We put it in, and then we were trying to figure out how to go about doing it. And Tom came to me over the summer and said, what can we do with this? And we were going to just come up with an idea to come forward with it, but then we thought we'd better slow down and get some public input in. So this is the first time you're hearing about it.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I don't think that it's great for the first time that we're hearing about a major expense for it to be on a town meeting warrant. But I'm a little bit confused. If the state is specifying what has to happen, what is it that a consultant is going to do for us?
Help us come up with a way to fund it, a strategy to fund it. Like I said, Pepperell and Westford have put surcharges on tax bills. I don't know if that's what we want to do. We want to figure out how to do it. We want to get public input. We want to go about this slowly and methodically and come up with the best way to do it. Because this is a major expenditure that the town is going to be undertaking.
Do you want to put out a ballpark figure for that major expenditure?
Yeah, I thought I had said earlier between $300,000 and $600,000 annually.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Thank you.
Is it legal to do a surcharge?
I'm gonna guess, since Pepperell and Westford are collecting it, I'm gonna assume yes.
Town meeting would have to approve that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you this, that's a very interesting thing you bring up, because Mike Chasen, our IT director, lives in Westford. And the board was just going to do it. And they got a lot of pressure and pushback, and they decided to bring it to town meeting. So I wouldn't ever suggest doing anything without town meeting approval.
Well, I mean, if you lay out what the annual costs are expected to be, and once the consultant weighs in on what the appropriate funding mechanism would be, I would think that before anybody imposes a surcharge, that the people that should do that would be town meeting.
I agree with you 100%.
Basically, this looks to me like what we called when I was on the school committee as an unfunded mandate coming
Yeah.
from the state.
It does.
For sure.
Yet another one. Actually, all these unfunded mandates become funded mandates because we pay for them.
Wow.
So they tell us what we have to do, and then we have to come up with the money. This is just another case.
Absolutely.
Yes, Art.
Several years ago, I chaired the Lost Lake Watershed Advisory Committee, and we did an extensive study on the impact of stormwater runoff on the lakes. The watershed for Lost Lake, Nobbs Pond, is 14 times the size of the lake. If you go up Martin's Pond Brook, the further you go up, now you're getting the runoff from fertilizer, from farms, from schools, and the level of phosphates goes through the roof. We were at we couldn't figure out how to solve this. So I think this is going to be an important thing to look at and study and figure out what are the alternatives going forward. Because those phosphates just feed the weeds, which then lead to all kinds of problems and destroying, as they say, the lakes or wildlife, aquatic and other wildlife habitats. So it's important to a lot of us that live on the lakes in Groton, regardless of which lake around them. But it's pretty incredible when you think that the watershed is 14 times the size of the lake, and the lake, in the case of Lost Lake Mount is about 205 acres. So, thank you.
Article 12 is the single-use plastic bag article. I think the board knows about that one.
Mark, I had asked you on this one if we're gonna do this, and while I do support this, I just don't wanna see this coming back next year with plastic straws, and then the following year with clamshell boxes and everything. Have we given any consideration to ban plastic clamshell boxes and straws at the same time?
We've sent a thing to the Board of Health and asked them to take that up. They are in the process of reviewing that.
So that would not be as part
It's not gonna be part of this,
article.
no. And I will tell you, I saw something, I'm sorry, John, I saw something in the paper the other day that I believe the state is taking this up for statewide ban anyway. So this may become moot after the fact if the state passes
So I should save
legislation.
my cup and straw.
Yes.
I did a whole bunch of research on this, and it's really styrene and expanded styrene are the most critical targets. And after a whole bunch of thought, I concluded that it needed to go to the Board of Health because most of this involves food being intermingled with polystyrene. And so they're the ones who inspect all these food service places, and they get to decide what is it's their decision to define what constitutes a business that has to comply with this. And as a result, I wrote up the recommendation that we forward it to them and ask them to consider
Makes a
creating
lot
it.
of sense, John.
And the last update we had was that somebody was gonna meet with Becky, and I don't know if that's happened or not. The chairman of the, that's who it was, the chairman of the,
Am I the liaison for Board of Health? Is
Yes.
that why? I don't recall knowing that someone was gonna
no,
meet.
the chairman of the Board of Health, this is a message that we
Yeah,
got.
they were gonna reach out to you, Becky, to
We're
talk
gonna reach
about,
out to you because
get it
you're
on the
the
agenda.
have
select
not-
board representation to them, so.
Okay, and who is chair? Is it Bob Fleischer?
I
Um,
think, who's chair of the Board of Health? Don, do you know?
Fleischer.
Okay, well, I-
Fleischer,
Is it Fleischer?
I believe it's Mr. Fleischer because
Yeah,
he's the
okay.
one who signed
Yep. What's your,
that paperwork.
I
that
haven't
we
heard
just
anything,
saw.
but now that I know that that happened, I'll reach out also. I do have a question about this.
Yep.
I know that we decided to just use somebody else's
this is
template.
the Cohasset bylaw.
Yeah, is this, exactly their wording, I think on section A of, under purpose and intent, section A, right there. Is that the wording from them? Because when I read the last line of that section A, that says that single-use plastic bags gradually disintegrate into minute particles which absorb toxins contaminating the food chain, it just was not totally, I just wondered whether that's actually written
That's-
correctly.
That's
That's
right out
word
of,
for word.
But it's word for word from
It's-
there?
It's word for word,
Okay,
and it was approved by
and it
the,
was approved, so
Attorney
we
General.
shouldn't tinker
Oh.
with it then, thank you.
it wasn't what I wrote. You'll see
Yeah.
that when you read the,
Jason Webb is the chair
Summary.
now.
Jason Weber, okay, great, thank you.
Do we want
The
this?
only change that I made to this is right here,
dates.
the date.
that date and another date up inside.
Yep.
Oh, and
We'll
also,
stay here.
I was just gonna note, I was shopping at the Hannafords in Townsend last week, and there are signs all over their doors that as of, I think it was either the 1st of September or the 1st of October, they're no longer giving out plastic bags. And 1st of August, okay, so it already happened. They're no longer giving out plastic bags, and you have to pay for paper bags.
Some,
Everybody around us is doing
yeah.
this, yeah. But the state, I think, has gone back and forth, and I don't think we should
Nope.
wait?
Oh,
I think we
no,
should
I'm not
go ahead.
suggesting that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, to answer Josh's question, the state may have a
Right.
bigger ban. Yes, Allison?
I'm just wondering if we wanna add this issue in general of banning, I don't know what you would call them, straws and all the like, to our ongoing items list, or whether that's gonna get too lengthy.
I think it's gonna get too lengthy, just
Alright,
by 2 cents.
no one's
Yeah, but you
disagreeing.
could just call it stuff.
That's fine.
Yeah. Article 13, the Conservation Commission has negotiated a purchase of 42 acres that front Martins Pond Road, the Trimper property. They are going to be applying for a state grant to reimburse them 50% of the cost, so they'll get back some $200,000 of the proposed purchase price of $400,000. So they like to have town meeting vote for the grant application. The Conservation Fund will be paying for this, and then whatever the state grant is would be reimbursed back into the Conservation Fund. You've seen this 3 or 4 times in the past at town meeting. Yes, John?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's important that in the package, in the back of the warrant, there should be a diagram of where this is.
A
In
map.
the warrant
A
or in the
map.
handout at town meeting?
Both. Either a handout at town meeting
Well, there'll
or
be definitely
something
be a
that
handout
goes
at
up
town
on a
meeting.
slide.
Yeah, there'll definitely be that.
Right, but people may want to go out, take a look at the property and so
Well,
forth.
you can't just go out and take a look at private property
So
necessarily.
we buy it.
You can walk all the limits of the boundaries and so forth.
I think it's an important sketch to have in advance of town meeting if possible.
Okay?
However, and can I also have a comment about this? I think that the explanatory language there, the summary maybe, it's not at all clear about the grant and the 50% reimbursement. I read it and I couldn't, I think we need to clean that up and make it a little bit clearer.
Yeah, this came from the Conservation Commission. I
Yeah.
can ask them to clean it up.
Right.
So are we voting at town meeting on the purchase?
Nope.
Or the purchase is going forward regardless, we're just voting on
The grant.
the grant?
Because the Conservation Commission has the ability with their fund, if they have enough money, which they do, to
Right.
go right ahead and buy the property without town meeting approval. But the state, when they file the grant applications, likes to see a article on the warrant for town meeting, having town authorize the application of the grant.
Yeah, I think that really needs to
Yeah,
be
I
made
mean,
clear.
Yeah, that's not.
just the
clear.
first sentence, if it said the purpose of this article is to receive permission to apply for a state grant, would begin to make it a little bit clearer what's being asked for here.
Yeah,
I'll talk to the Conservation
Josh?
Commission, absolutely.
A number of years ago, I recall the planning board working with the Conservation Commission to put together a list of priority 1, 2, and 3 land acquisitions moving to the future. And I think that, first of all, I know where this property is, and it's a great connecting property, but I don't know where it sits on that list. So anytime something comes up for acquisition by the commission, I would think that referencing that document in terms of where that falls on the priority list, is it highest, middle, or lowest priority, to me, is important, because that allows the taxpayers to know that money that's being spent, whether it's grant reimbursable or not, meets the criteria of land that they determined they would want to acquire. So, could we please get that in there as well?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Josh.
Will do. Any other questions? Okay. Article 14 is to establish a transfer station revolving fund. This particular fund is for our glass pulverizing plant that we have. Have you guys been up there to see that? Any of you had a chance to see
I've
it?
seen it.
Coolest thing I've ever seen.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It turns it into
Well, not the
sand.
coolest thing, but one of the coolest.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. But anyway, so we have people coming in from other communities that bring the glass there, and then we end up selling off the product and everything. So if we charge or whatever, Tom wants to be able to put this into a revolving fund so that he can use it to maintain the device. Because, you gotta buy new cutters and blades
And
and,
hammers. and-
but whatever they're called. So, I think that's a great idea. So to make the thing self-sufficient. And please keep in mind that glass pulverizing plant was purchased through a state grant as
great.
well.
So could you explain the language here, a spending limitation of $10,000 annually is suggested for this account.
Yep.
What does that mean?
So basically, we have to, by law, every year, we have to set in the bylaw, you'll see in the town meeting each year, the spring town meeting, we have a revolving fund bylaw, and in there, we put the spending levels, limits that they can spend out of that fund in a given year. So Tom thinks it's probably gonna be about 10,000 annually to maintain that. So we set a spending limit of $10,000 for it.
The product that comes out of this machine, it basically takes bottles and they do, you know, lighter colored glass in one load, darker colored glass in another load. But it hammers the glass and chops it up, and what comes out, you can run it through your hands like this,
Sand.
and there's not a sharp shard in it. It's
amazing.
unbelievable. It's pretty cool stuff.
And it can be
So
used
every
for-
It can be
revolving
used to the
fund,
side of roadways, it can be
Landscaping.
used,
Sure.
so like, I could
Yeah.
use it in my landscape construction business. I haven't used it yet, so instead of putting stone dust underneath a walkway or whatnot, you can use it as a setting bed. Seems like a great product.
It is, yes, John?
so every,
Doesn't mean he's gonna spend 10,000 every year.
every revolving fund
Yes,
has to have a declared
Spending limit.
spending limitation.
correct.
So this is simply establishing it.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Are there
the-
other things that, through the DPW, similar to this, that should have a revolving fund, or I guess my question is really, do we
We
need
have
to or
another
want to limit
recycling,
this?
we already have a recycling revolving fund there. When people come in and buy the,
The yellow bags.
no, not the bags, the compost bags.
Yeah,
So that pays for the compost, so when people buy them, it goes into the revolving fund, and they use that to buy more composting bags.
so are we required, or have we chosen to have
We've
these
chosen
so
to have
narrowly
this.
defined?
Yes, we've chosen to have this so narrowly defined for this purpose.
Means there's no fee right now to drop your glass there.
Well, no, right now it goes in the general fund.
Right.
Yeah, because other towns are bringing glass.
Correct.
And they're paying us, right?
Correct. So right now it's going into the general fund. Tom wants to put it in a separate fund to maintain this piece of equipment.
I think it makes good sense.
Makes real good sense.
I do too, I'm still not entirely clear why we're limiting it just to the glass plant and the glass plant equipment, as opposed to just transfer station
I'll
recycling
Leave it up
equipment
to you,
or
Patricia.
something.
Well, most of the money for the recycling that comes in through the transfer station, the plastics, the cardboard and all that,
The odd items,
that, we put that into the general fund, and we use that as a receipt to balance the budget. I don't wanna put that in a revolving fund, I don't wanna make it an enterprise fund. It comes into the general fund, because some years they have great years, some years they don't. And you know, we've been going through estimated receipts and all of that, and so I don't want those into a revolving fund. But for special items like this, it makes sense to segregate this particular piece out. I don't know if there's something else you wanna
The
add?
interesting thing about revolving funds is that you can use the revenue to fund ongoing activities that are related to that particular department. But you can't do it if you're already using the revenue in your general fund to balance the budget. So when you start a new sort of activity that generates brand new revenue that you've never used in the budget before, that's when you want to segregate it and create a revolving fund if you think you need that money to continue the activity. And in this particular case, that glass plant is going to require maintenance, and we'd have to build it into the budget, which you could do if you wanted to. But Tom feels fairly confident that he can use the revenue that he's getting from the fees to just completely maintain that glass plant. So that's the time to grab it. It's at the beginning when you've never used that revenue to balance your budget, because once you have, then it's no longer, would no longer qualify to be a revolving fund unless you backed it out. And that's a trickier process.
So, does that answer your question?
It does, there are a lot of really interesting regulations that the
Yep.
state has thought
But
of.
it also, in some ways, makes sense if we're getting revenue from other towns, as opposed to just from Groton residents, which I imagine more of the other stuff is Groton residents, right?
Well, we do get revenue from other towns that bring their recyclables to us as well.
We do?
Oh, absolutely, that goes right into the general fund, but as Patricia said, we've never had this particular one
Right.
before. So I think it makes sense. Article 15 is another revolving fund request from the Council on Aging Director, and what she wants to do is, as you know, we're almost done with our senior center. I'll give you an update under the ongoing issues list. And we are purchasing some exercise equipment totaling some $38,000 in the building. 15,000 of that is, bless you, 15,000 of that is coming from Lawrence Academy, as you know, through a grant that they gave us towards the equipment. But again, that equipment's gonna need to be maintained and kept up. So I believe the council will be charging for the use of the equipment when you go in there, nominal fee, and they wanna put that in a revolving fund to use to maintain the equipment and, you know, eventually replace the equipment if necessary. So that's the point of this particular revolving fund. I think it's interesting.
So sounds like a new concept, I guess, to charge people.
It absolutely is a new concept.
And I guess I have a little bit of an initial opposition to that, because I think that part of the reason that we have a senior center is we want to provide services. And I know you do have to pay minimal fees, like for the meals that get served. Not always, though. I think some are free and some you have to pay for. And pay for some of the trips. But the more we start charging things, the more we're just eating away at the concept that we're providing services for a segment of our population who could benefit from those services.
But we didn't have to put a gym in the senior center, and by putting the exercise equipment in the senior center potentially saves somebody who's using the facility money from, that they would spend going to a gym or something, paying out of pocket. So it is a nominal fee, and it's something that the town meeting voters can weigh in on. If they shoot the thing down, well, then it probably becomes part of the budget. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
John?
So it's
The
good for debate.
town of Westford Senior Center, which is located in Forge Village, it's in an old school, and it has a gym. And some neighbors of mine who have now moved elsewhere, they had to pay to use that gym.
Oh.
But what they paid for it was significantly, and I mean significantly less than what they paid going anywhere else. And that equipment does have to be maintained.
That's Kathy's point.
Otherwise, people get hurt and that sort of thing. So I think we should look at this seriously and perhaps ask some other towns if, you know, what
I
they're
think
doing
Kathy's
with it.
done her
I just happen to
research.
know about that one.
She'll be here next Monday night for the public hearing to explain it more fully, but it's an interesting concept.
And will she at that point be coming forward with kind of a dollar amount
Well-
that's estimated to be charged to see? I mean,
Oh,
which
to
is
me, it
gonna be charging
matters whether
people?
it's, you know,
Yeah,
$5 a month
I think she
or-
already has something in mind, but I'll make
Well-
sure she talks about that next week, yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would help me.
yeah.
Okay.
I too am struggling with this one.
No, it's like I said, interesting concept. Article 16, Amelia Way, Town Way, that was, as the board will remember, we were gonna take it up last fall, it wasn't ready. They've taken their time making sure it's ready, and my understanding is both the planning board and the DPW director have signed off on it, and we will be going forward with the acceptance. We've scheduled a public hearing on this roadway for next week as well. So we'll have the public hearing on the layout for the board to adopt it for town meeting, as well as talk about the article itself. So this is something that the town meeting will have to weigh in on as well.
Could you ensure that for this one and the next one, that the sign-offs are visible and brought to the meeting next week?
Well, for Amelia Way, we will have to, because we're having the public hearing. Mockingbird Hill Road, that public hearing is probably gonna be, we haven't got all the information yet. This was submitted by the developer. I put it on the warrant. If they're not ready to go and we can't hold a public hearing, it'll be withdrawn.
Okay, well, but if they can't come into us and show us.
You have to have a public hearing 7 days before.
No, I hear that, but can show us that Tom Delaney has formally
Yep.
okayed it.
Yes.
And
The
the
planning
planning
board,
board,
yes.
who uses engineers to
Yep.
come in and tell them it's okay.
Yep, that'll be
That
next
those
week.
have actually happened.
Yes.
Is this part of the, down at the Four Corners,
Rocky Hill.
Rocky Hill?
Yes.
Mockingbird Hill Road is, yes. Amelia
Yeah.
Way, I believe, is up on
Yeah, that's in West.
Townsend Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Mockingbird Hill, I think that's where the small starter homes that we approved the sewer expansion for.
It's in that
It's in
same
that
area.
vicinity,
It's in that same area,
Yeah.
Becky,
but
yes.
it's full-size homes. Mockingbird Hill Road.
Mockingbird Hill Road is the loop road that runs off of Robin Hill Road.
Yep.
That runs up the hill and
Makes
it
it
loops
easier.
around to where the over 55
Right.
development is on both
Right,
sides.
but they were billed as starter homes, smaller. They're not, I just saw something from Fran about
I
this.
think there's a road off of Mocking Hill.
There's a road
down.
off of Mockingbird.
That's what I think it is,
Mockingbird
George.
Hill Road, that's a
Yep.
dead end, and that's where the starting
It's a
homes are. But
cul-de-sac at the end, isn't it?
Mockingbird Hill Road is full-size homes.
Okay.
It would be helpful to have a plan. For
Oh,
this.
you'll have everything for the
And
public
then-
hearing.
One other question, where both of these say as recommended by the planning board and laid out by the select board,
Correct.
We didn't
what
lay it
does
out.
what does that mean in
Next.
this sense? Because we
Okay.
certainly haven't laid out any roads recently.
You're going to, the public hearing is when you lay out the road. So next week, you're going to have a public hearing, you will have the plans, you will have the layout, you will have the comments from the Public Works Director and the Planning Board, and you will lay out the road and accept the layout. And then you will present it to town meeting, and then town meeting accepts it as a public way. There's a two-step process. First, the planning board approves the subdivision and makes sure it's built to the standards. They recommend to the select board to accept the layout, which means the select board lays it out, approves it,
Proves the design.
approves the design, makes sure it's built to subdivision standards, and then you bring it to town meeting, and then town meeting accepts it as a town way. So all of this for Amelia Way will take place next week. I think you've had a public, I think,
Understood.
since you've been on the board that you've done this.
Yes, and I
think.
understand the process. To me, it's a little awkward that the planning board is on the hook for recommending this and we're on the hook for having laid it out.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
That's
the
how it works.
select,
Because
the
we
select board
haven't-
is in charge of roads, and there's meets and bounds on the plans that establish the right of way and the width of pavement, and that's what a consulting engineer for the planning board has to okay.
Mish
But
engineer.
Massachusetts state law, I believe, just put it in place that select boards and lay out roads.
You don't like that?
Nope, not at all.
It's the law, though, that's
I
what we have
think
to
you need to
do.
go to the State House to change that.
Maybe the terminology
I'll add it
that's
to my
tripping
list.
us up.
It absolutely is. But, all right, onward.
Okay, and then finally, I received a phone call from the town clerk Friday afternoon that the petitioners will be withdrawing this article. Now, they sent a letter to me saying, we want to withdraw it, and I said, that's not good enough. I need the 10 signatures of the people who put it on the warrant to take it off the warrant. If they do not give me those 10 signatures, it stays on the warrant, and then it gets withdrawn on the floor of town meeting. But they are not going forward with this article. I hope before October, whatever the first, October 1st, that I receive those 10 signatures so I can take it off the warrant. Otherwise, I'm not breaking the law, I'm not taking it off the warrant.
So I understand that this may be moot. I tried to figure out where the recreational overlay district currently exists. And
I don't think it does.
unable to determine that in
Yeah.
any way.
I never heard of it.
It's in the bylaw.
It's in the bylaw, but I couldn't find any map of any sort.
Yeah.
So
I believe it exists.
I think we either need to potentially, at a future town meeting, update our bylaw and remove this overlay district, or
Provide a map.
provide
Or
a map or
understand
something.
what the intention was in creating such a thing. It's interesting that the homeowner was not one of the signatories.
Makes it look.
I don't know, makes it look like another group of people is gonna rezone your property.
I will talk to the planning board about that.
Thank you.
That's it. Any other questions? Like I said, next week, we get to do this all over again in the public hearing format. Maybe by then, I'll have something from the legislature on how we lay out roads.
Maybe
Just
you'll-
joking,
I
Allison.
can lay out a road. I haven't done it recently
Maybe you'll
here.
have an approved charter, but probably not that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I will take care of that. That's all I have on that. So going to the next item in the town manager's report, which is item number 3. So when the select board approved the charge of the major initiative planning committee last month, you requested that I forward it to the, yes?
Excuse me, I see somebody I know here who's for a one-day liquor license. And
Oh.
it
Oh.
won't take very
Oh,
long.
absolutely.
Would you consider advancing that?
Yeah.
So we received a
Item number
request,
6?
up to, if you go up to item number 7, 6 rather, we received a request for a one-day beer and wine license for 3 Common Inc., doing business as Bull Run Restaurant for a wedding to be held on September 14th from 4 to 10 p.m. at Sunset Farm, 154 Farmers Row. I would ask the board to approve that, consider approving that license this evening. We received the insurance, we received everything that we need to comply with our policy.
All right. Questions, discussion?
I move that the board approve a one-day beer and wine license at 3 Common Inc., DBA Bull Run Restaurant, for September 14th, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. at Sunset Farm, 154 Farmers Row, Groton.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
I apologize, I didn't realize that's why you were here. I
No,
would've-
No, I saw, I looked it
Thank
up
you,
and I'm
Josh.
like,
So I just had a question about that, because I thought that it's getting kind of close to the date, and if we somehow decided not to approve it, that would be a problem for people. Is it just that people wait till the last minute to apply, or?
Whenever we get the application is when we bring it to the board.
Okay,
We can't anticipate when people are gonna, right?
right, but they could, anyone could apply earlier. They,
I agree.
But we have a policy statement or something that says they have to do this.
They have to, they're gonna, if there's gonna be alcohol served, whether they pay for it or whether it's an open bar, they need a liquor license
Right.
from the select board to
But
do it.
how have we codified that? Is it in a bylaw? Is it?
It's a policy.
It's a policy?
Yes.
or
Okay.
is it state law?
Well, actually, it's state law, and then we have a policy on how we go about doing it.
So one of the things we could think about doing is modifying the policy if it doesn't already have a identification of how much in advance we want to see the application.
We asked for 30 days. But in this case, the gentleman that's applying for the license is actually a Board of Selectmen member in Shirley, who must also work for the Bull Run. And when he called me the other day, he realized that he needed to do this and hadn't done it, so.
Sounds good. Is there a mechanism, and this is probably more in the weeds than we need to be, for kind of not tracking down, but if we become aware of something that doesn't have this, I mean, how do we know that we're getting pretty good coverage in terms of these one day?
I don't know. I don't wanna sound sarcastic, but
No,
I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to go
Yeah.
out and find out who's having the wedding, who needs a one-day liquor
Okay.
license, who's having a party. It's impossible for me to do that, but as soon as we hear about it, we bring it to the board for
Yeah.
action, and we will
Okay.
continue to do that.
One thing we could think about is if they come in after 30 days.
You guys can deny it.
Well, you've got your
Well-
denial, but we could also put a acceleration fee that they're gonna have to
Right.
pay
We can do that. We charge $40 a
for
night, right?
starting it late. Because these are the
Right.
kinds of things that trip us up when we're trying to put
right,
this together and make it visible
Yeah.
to people, and here it's coming in at the last minute. And
Well,
this
we're gonna
isn't
be
the
looking
first
at-
one
yeah.
we've seen.
We're gonna be looking at policies, Don, we charge 40 for a beer and wine, 50 for an all alcoholic license. If somebody comes in, within 2 weeks, maybe you charge 75 and 100, I don't know.
yeah, I think that's an
Give the
interesting idea.
incentive to come in earlier,
Yeah,
Motivation.
motivation.
exactly.
That's an excellent point. So when the select board approved the charge of the major initiative planning committee last month, you requested that I forward it to the finance committee. The FinCom met last week and have voted unanimously to propose changing the overall charge and the name of the committee to the originally proposed capital planning committee. They are not in favor of a major initiative planning committee. They believe the part of the charge that has to do with budgetary matters is not necessary, and the focus of the committee should be on capital planning only. The FinCom believes that having them examine budgetary matters is a duplicate effort, as it's already responsibility of the finance committee and finance team to oversee the preparation of the town's operating budget. And then furthermore, depending on the issue, there was no way of knowing what kind of expertise is needed on the committee, and it would be impossible to have a 5-member committee with knowledge needed for all matters. Finally, the finance committee believes that the committee as currently proposed is adding more bureaucracy to the town, which isn't needed, so they voted to unanimously change it. So, what I did to help the board in your review of the charge and of what the finance committee is doing, and I tried to get this out in advance so you had a chance to review it and read it and look at it and determine how you want to handle it, is in the packet, beginning on page
24
24. There we are.
is the updated
Page
one.
21. On page 21, I gave you the original charge that the board voted to approve. And then on page 24, I've given you the red line charge of the Finance Committee. So you can see they've done some editing and changing of the charge. So the question to the select board, I know Bud is here as chairman of the FinCom, that can answer any questions or add to what I just said.
Yeah, I suspect you might as well come on up to the table, but
So, I look to the direction of the board. Now, I will tell you, we've received 11 applicants, and what I was hoping to do tonight was come to the board and say, we have 11 applicants, the Finance Committee reviewed the charge, they made some minor revisions. I'm going to suggest we adopt those minor revisions and invite the applicants into your September 23rd meeting to begin the interviews. By the way, we sent them all letters letting them know that we have their applications, and it'll be the September 23rd for the interviews. However, the committee that they applied for and what this is are different. So if the board decides to adopt the recommendation of the Finance Committee, that may change how you want to go about doing appointments to the committee, if at all. So I will leave it over to Bud to supplement anything I said. And I know Anna asked to be here tonight. Anna Elliott asked to be here tonight to talk about it. I believe I sent you all an email from Anna a few weeks ago on what she wanted to propose as the makeup of the committee, so she's here as well.
Yep.
So, I'll stop
Alright.
talking for a change.
but we will get to you, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, well, when we get, if we agree to the changes here, we need, there's a couple other things we need to tweak in the main one. Okay, but first of all, we met last Tuesday to discuss this, the FinCom did, and had a lot of discussion on this thing, and we basically asked ourselves, we said, what is this charge trying to accomplish? Because we didn't really understand what it's trying to accomplish. And as we discussed it, it seemed to be, this is again the new charge, not the old charge, because, let me regress for a minute. What's up there now is basically the old charge, which is the old charge. It was just a charge for the capital planning committee. That's basically what that is now. It's basically that one that we had talked about last year. We had gotten it already, and all of a sudden it just went on the back burner. And when it came alive again, it came in with a bunch of service language in it. Before, so this is basically the old one. This is what all this red line stuff just basically goes back to the old charge. But anyways, when the FinCom looked at it, we were discussing what was the pre-question, what was the problem we're trying to solve. And we discussed that, and what we believed it was the surprise element. In other words, when you look at what happens when stuff comes up, there seems to be, it just happens. It's like the budget cycle pops, and all of a sudden there's a extra 2 people or 3 people that need, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, how'd that happen, and what are we going to do about it? We need somebody to look at it. And so it seemed like that the major, other than forming another committee, the reason this committee was being formed is to look into the future and try to figure out what was required. That's if you read this, that's sort of how it was.
So I think, and everyone can kind of join in, I don't know how we're gonna keep this orderly, but, you know, to me, the intent of the changes that we made were to add on what I think we perceive to be a very important second role, which is to understand and prioritize between all of the upcoming demands on our financial resources. So regardless of whether it's a capital project, you know, hiring new staff that makes an operational impact, you know, kind of to have one entity that is reviewing, understanding, and then prioritizing all of these, because currently we do kind of have these silos, and even when there's, you know, good communication and review within those silos, there's not much between them.
What we looked at was the fact was that the capital planning process, the way it is today, is completely different than the operating budget planning process. The budget has 2 sides of it. It has the budget, which is the actual year we're in, and then it has a 5-year planning process. in the 5-year planning process, we believe is where all the new stuff for operations would be picked up. In other words, today, when we put the budget together, we're really only dealing with the current year. We really don't deal with what's coming up. And so what we're gonna do starting this year, like in a month, or less than a month, is we're gonna put a new initiative page into what the directors have to fill out. So when Mark sends out his budget package to his directors, there'll be a new initiative page for the next 5 years. So if the fire chief wants to add something in year 3, or the police in year 2 or 4, that'll be mentioned, because only the directors, not an outside committee, only the directors know what they need. They're the only ones that can say, I think my department's gonna have an issue with Indian Hill, or I'm gonna have an issue with, if I keep losing all my call firefighters. They're the only ones that know this, and they need to tell us being the FinCom, Finance Committee, and the Select Board, what's coming up in the future. So we're gonna add that particular page into the budget process. So we're gonna start seeing right off as they come through. Here's stuff we're thinking of in the future. That process exists today. There's nothing new about that process. We already have that process. What we haven't done is have that one focus on new initiatives. So we're planning on focusing on new initiatives now, which we haven't really in the past. It's more been get the budget done. So we believe by putting that new initiative page 21 through 26 or 25, whatever it is, in there, that we'll be able to discuss that and then say, when do we need to start prioritizing that? If it's 3 years out, you may not want to do anything with it right now. Just be aware it's there. It's 4 people. It's $400,000 ballpark, because it seems like each person costs about that. And then as it gets closer, then the decision gets made, okay, what's else from everybody else in the operational budget? Forget capital yet. Everybody else in the operational budget, what do they have? And then we as a town have to start saying, well, what can we, what's a priority for the town? Because we're gonna see them all, because they're all gonna be on a specific chart, because we never did this before, but it will be there now. So the process exists today to do it. The people who understand the numbers, as far as how to work the numbers in there, exist today. The thing that doesn't exist today, maybe, could, depends on what the select board wants to do, is do you have the right team to look at it if you need to? In other words, if it's an addition of 1 or 2 people, you probably, like we did when we added Tommy's people, we had just the internal people look at it. We didn't go outside and hire a consultant, or just, we didn't form a committee to go look at it. We basically had a couple of people say, yeah, this makes sense because it's gonna save money, whatever. But if it's big enough, and it says, well, we're gonna do a whole different thing with the fire department, the police department, the library, then you probably may wanna have a group pulled together to do that. Don't know, you might. It's happened before, and it probably will happen again. But the whole point was, there is a process today. We haven't used it the way we probably should have used it, and we will start using it that way. So we'll pick up the operational stuff. So we didn't think there'd be another committee needed to go around and ask fire department, well, all these people about what are they working on. They're gonna put it in the budget process. Then it'll come up. If you want somebody to look at it after that, okay, but to look at it before you get too close is like spinning a lot of wheels without things are gonna happen, but at least they'll highlight it. The capital process, when we don't have a complete skill set in town, or nor do we have a system in town that looks at, I don't believe, maybe Mark's gonna tell me we do, but that looks at what are all the building inventory, what state are they in, when's the maintenance been done on them, what do we need to look at as far as future, based on population, based on more of this, more of that, less than this. Are we gonna need more buildings, less buildings? This is gonna become, how do we deal with Lost Lake Fire Department if we put a full-time fire department on? You know, do we need it if we got everybody at the center? Those kind of things need to be looked at as we think about new stuff in the next 5 years for capital. We also need to look at all the vehicles. What is our inventory of vehicles? And then when should we be turning them in? There's lease companies that can tell you what they think it should be. We based it on, you know, our feel of when we think the maintenance gets higher, then it's probably worth keeping a car or a truck or whatever, fire engine. That is what I think this capital committee was originally gonna do, and then work that through. I think that is, I mean, we don't have a facilities manager. We have Tom, who runs the highway department. You know, usually a company would have a facilities director, and underneath that person you'd have a person who runs the highway department, you know, a person who does the plowing, a person who worries about the buildings. a person who worries about new structures. There's nobody here. It's sort of like Tom, Mark, and whoever else they can, maybe the building guy, I don't know. But that group, I think, this team could help by inventorying stuff and doing just what I said they should do. That, we believe, is what the charge of the first one was, and that's required. Now, when the budget gets put together, we ask the directors what they need. There's gonna be a line for operational, and then they'll have a capital line, if it's tied to that operational issue. If someone says, I need this new group, and I'm gonna need another 5 vehicles or whatever, that'll show up on that charge. It will not deal with new buildings. That would be what this group would. Of course, these two things just get married together in the process. So it's the budget group, it's the budget process that works today with a minor modification to make it work better. And then it's something we don't have today, I don't believe, to help do all the building stuff, look in the future, the library, all the things that happened probably would have been done better if we had someone who understood what building costs were, looked at it more closely than just pops up in a budget cycle. And that's what I think we don't have. I think we have the other one pretty well under control, except for the minor tweak that I mentioned. So when we look back at it, we said, why have a group put together and start getting in asking for the same stuff that we're gonna be asking for? And what's the value of that, unless there's gonna be a committee formed at some point in time to say, this is really serious now. It's moved in from year 5 to year 4 to year 3. We need to really start looking at it. We want to form a committee to look at it. But other than that, it's gonna be picked up in the budget process with the way we look at the budgets today. So our view was, let's leave that one alone and fix it under existing process. Let's focus on what we originally wanted this charge to be, which I still believe is valuable charge, and all the things that, all the background that's in here is basically the same as the original charge. You want facilities management, you want building, someone who's a contractor maybe, operations. It's important. So there's not really a lot of difference in what you're looking for versus the last time. I don't see a lot of difference in because this should be more focused on building capital. We have all the other skill sets right now in the FinCom, the Finance Committee, Mark, probably a couple of you guys. We don't need those skill sets just to keep the process going. We need the skill sets we don't have today, I believe, on this capital one, because we don't have those kind of people just sort of like on a committee hanging around waiting to do this.
Mm-hmm. So my concern becomes, I think, internally, that we talk about operating budget, we talk about things that are paid for out of stabilization, a debt exclusion, an operating exclusion. Ultimately, I think for the majority of the taxpayers, it's just money that's coming out of their pocket and going to the town.
Yep.
So I think, in my mind anyway, part of what we're trying to accomplish is to have some entity that's kind of open and accessible, that is looking at all of these demands kind of on the citizen's pocketbook. So whether it's a capital expenditure, a change in operating, right now I'm concerned that I'm still hearing what sounds like silos of this group looks at capital, this group looks at operating, and I'm kind of looking for that. Who pulls that magic all together and says, well, these may all be valid for year 3, but we can't afford all of these in year 3, so this is a priority. We're going to shove this off. We're going to.
But that's the responsibility of Mark. I mean, he needs to have two. He and the select board has to make the call with the FinCom. There is two separate things. One is, if you go, including the way we do our taxes, there's two separate entities. There's the operating budget, and those things are going to be 5 years out. They're going to hit the operating budget. That's in your tax rate, the regular tax rate. Then there's the capital projects that are in your tax rate, but they're in a completely different track than there are in the operating things. Operating ones basically happen every year except for these new initiatives. Capital are big, they hit one time, then they hit again, and they go for 20 or 30 years, and they need to be merged in, but there's not. Mark at the top in the select board and the FinCom are the ones who have to make sure that these things, now that we're gonna get, we don't have the information yet, that's the issue. Mark may have some of it, but we as a FinCom don't know today. We'll probably, hopefully know within 2 months, if the directors are thinking about new operating things that they want to add into the plan. We don't know that today. That's what's required. Then we also need to know, because of the tax, different kind of taxes than the other taxes, still comes out of your pocket, but is voted differently. It's not an ongoing after they put it in the budget. It needs to be understood, but it's completely different. That's why companies have a capital budget and an operating budget. And neither of them, they intertwine at the top. There's not somebody running around, going around town, a group of 5 people, or 6 or 7, what the committee's gonna be, trying to pull together all this stuff separate from the real work that needs to get done, which is the operating budget and the capital budget. Then it gets pulled together. This group, to me, would do the capital. The group that exists today, 2 or 3 of them, would do the budget, and then it gets pulled together in the budget process. The budget process per the charter is in fact the FinCom. That's what it is. The 5-year plan is the FinCom, Finance Committee, the Town Finance Committee, and the Town Manager. And then that is where it should come. Now, what we don't have is the thing that I'm hoping we can get to, which is the capital one. We need that. We don't. I don't believe we have that at all. And then, like I said, the tie-in happens at the top. Here, right here. That's the top, right here.
Becky?
So I think that the FinCom's suggestions about looking 5 years ahead on the operating budget are excellent, and I totally support you doing that. I do not think we need to change the charge of this committee for you to do that. I think that as we envision the Major Initiatives Planning Committee, we wanted them to look at, as you said, capital, of course, because that is perhaps the more obvious place that we have not had a committee looking.
Right.
But I think that because any addition of service / personnel has a huge and ongoing impact on our budget, I think that it is well worth the town's benefit, it's well to the town's benefit to have more people looking at that and analyzing it, and I think that this Major Initiatives Committee would do that in a different way than your committee would. I'm not saying that only one of them should do it. I think we're better off having ongoing looking by the Finance Committee 5 years ahead, as well as the more arm's length analysis that I imagine the Major Initiatives Committee being able to do. So I don't think that we need to change the charge, and I don't think that the charge as we voted it limits you in any way from doing what you think you should do.
I'm not saying it limits us. I'm saying you put an overhead structure and it doesn't need to exist.
Well, let's,
You're
I
putting
mean,
5 more
yeah,
people into a
okay,
system to start looking at stuff. For what purpose?
For what purpose is to
Because you don't
have
trust
more
what's underneath
eyes.
other places that are getting done. I mean, this is a layer of overhead that's getting added in for what purpose? What are you trying to solve? You don't think the FinCom's doing their job,
Well,
or the select
but-
board, or, I don't get it.
Well, I
Okay,
think to
but
your
we've
own
heard
point though,
you.
but there's a piece of this that has long been missing.
Yes,
So-
and for
So
instance.
that's part of it. It's not a case of saying someone's not doing their job.
What's,
It's
the
a
mean the
case of-
capital piece?
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So-
We agree with that. That's missing. Absolutely, that's
And
missing.
I,
Absolutely.
to answer your question, I think that a department head is, and I mean, I don't mean anything negative about this, but they're going to be advocating for their department. They're going to see the benefits of adding people to their department. I am looking for people whose focus is more on the, let's quantify the benefits that we get here versus the benefits we get there, because we got this department saying they need another person, and we get this department saying they need a half a person, and we get that department saying they need 2 people, and we've got the public suggesting that we should have a brand new department that we've never even had before, and somebody has to analyze that. And so I respectfully suggest that the purpose is that we have thorough analysis done, not to diminish, not to demean or ignore or, override anyone, but to have the overview that is looking at both capital overview, and long-term service increase overview.
See, to me, to have people looking at the overview of the town that are not, are committee formed for looking at general stuff is a charge I still don't understand what it's gonna do. I mean, FinCom does this
Let's
stuff.
give it a try and see. is what
But now
I-
you're gonna have
No.
they're gonna be going to directors in town and asking them, what are you doing? And Mark goes around and says, what are you doing? And FinCom says, put this on an issue stage. They're gonna say, who the heck's running this? And you get the selectmen who do set policy and run the town. It's like, why are we, to me, it's just a waste of effort to put another committee in place that's gonna duplicate what we already have. I agree, there needs to be a capital planning committee, absolutely. But to say now this committee's gonna be making recommendations for the overview of the whole town to say, I think we should prioritize it this way, that way. That's your job, and that's not their job. Their job is you tell them to do something and they do it. And you say, listen, by the way, make your recommendation. If you think about the capital, how much do we need to put, what's the right way, how often should vehicles be turned over? That's a charge, go do it. What should we have for buildings based on population? To say, how should we run in the budget? Should we put 2 people in Tommy's group and 1 people at the library? That's Mark's job and our job and your job.
Yeah, well, and I'm
And
saying.
you don't need more people to tell us how to do
I'm
that.
saying, and this board, we voted that we wanted that, analysis done as part of how we would make our decision. We want that advice.
Okay, well, the FinCom 6-0 said they think that the capital one is correct, the right way to go, and that this other overlay of I mean, if you want to do it, it'll fit in. It's just, to me, it's a lot of effort for people, extra effort to do, I don't know what they're adding. That's all. And we decided, maybe you can do what you want, and we're gonna do anyways. It just says, we'll deal with them if they want to start asking a bunch of questions, but I don't see the value on the operating side, because I say that because the system is there. We just haven't used the process right. We haven't added that new initiative, and I agree. Surprises bother us. It's happened too many times, and shame on us for not putting that thing in there before. It took this to say, wow, yeah, we should have done that. Why didn't we put that 1 page in there? We've had these surprises all the time. Let's just do it, put it in the 5-year planning process, and away we go.
Do you think, Bud, that I do see you are, do you think that the finance committee has the capacity to add this in realistically and do it effectively?
Well, again, it's what will be required. If in fact there's onesies and twosies, that's gonna happen in the process. If there's gonna be 3 years out, they wanna change over the fire department to full-time, or they wanna do whatever, that will probably take a study. The question is, at that point in time, you're right, you may wanna put a steering committee or a committee to put together to look at that. And then you say, who do you want on that committee? The committee you have here for the capital is a skill set completely different. 3 or 4 of them completely different than you're gonna want for this other one.
Not necessarily. I
You
disagree
got a
with that.
builder up there, you want a builder, you want a maintenance guy. I mean, those are not what I would consider who you want operating to look at a fire or police or more highway, if you want to say, I'm gonna take over Dunstable. That's not the same team. There's a different team depending how big it is and how serious it is. So our concern also was, yeah, you probably do need help when you get some of these, because we need help when we get to some of these, but it's like, who is the right person for that committee? You got 5 people, and they're gonna say, well, what's your skill set? This, and this. Well, it's great for this one. What about this one? So I don't disagree. You may wanna put a committee together. First of all, not everything needs a committee, but there are ones that are serious that will need them. Smaller ones, they get part of the budget process. And our view was anything over 50,000 a year, cumulatively, up over 3 years would be 100,000. It probably should be looked at, because that adds pretty fast up in the budget. Operating wise. Capital is capital, whatever it is, it is. $30,000, $60,000 cars or whatever they are. They all need to be looked at, because I don't think the whole cycle has been looked at. And that's what I thought this committee was gonna do. So again, the skill sets are different. If they wanna come on and they're gonna look half capital and operating people, and you're gonna have this blend of, I don't know how you're gonna find the people. They're gonna fit both committees. You make a couple, like a finance person would probably fit that committee. An operating person would probably fit that committee. a builder, you know, a project manager of a construction company, a maintenance guy who works in a big company or understands maintenance. I don't see what they're gonna add to the other side. They're certainly gonna add a lot to this committee, because that's what's gonna be required. And that's what I was hoping the skill set you get.
Art?
Bud did a great job in summarizing the hour and 10 minutes of discussion we had
No
last
space in that
Tuesday about this.
Are we gonna try to duplicate that tonight?
Yeah.
No.
Sorry?
Heading down
You
that
may
road.
well.
And one of the main points that we discussed is that a 5-person committee cannot possibly have the expertise, Bud alluded to it, to do both capital and operations. They can't. You're laying another layer of bureaucracy on top of organizations that already exist. And I think it would be a huge mistake to take this proposal as originally written or revised, which included operating and services, and layer that on top of the original proposal that the Finance Committee wrote up over a year ago, which was capital. We definitely need support on looking at the capital budget. We don't need any more surprises like we just had in the water department for $7.5 million. We've got to force these departments to start putting together, with the best knowledge that they have and truthful knowledge, that this is what they see coming, so that we don't get these kind of surprises. Let the Finance Committee, with the refinements that Bud mentioned, deal with the operating side. We'll force an issue that we want to know a 5-year projection on the operating side. What do you see coming? What's going to be needed? Let the capital budget, as an advisory committee, by the way, as an advisory committee, because the other concern we had is the way this thing was written, this new committee would be all powerful. We weren't sure where the hell does Finance Committee fit in, or even Select Board fit in. So that's why we decided to go back with some refinements on the original capital proposal, capital budget proposal committee that is written up here. We did some wordsmithing of that to make sure that it was listed or stated to be an advisory committee and not a powerful committee on its own. So my big concern, you cannot possibly have a budget, a capital committee and a operating budget committee that would have the expertise to do both. They wouldn't. My brother can do capital on the back of his hand. I wouldn't want him to do operating. So that's where I'm coming from.
Anna?
Thank you. I guess I just want to start out by saying, initially, I do support having a major initiative planning committee, or whatever you want to title it, but in listening to the discussion here, as well as the email that I had sent you a couple of weeks ago when I first really dug my teeth into your efforts to form this committee, was to ask that you, under the section B on the appointment, was to have it require that there be a diversity of the people that you draw from. And when I say diversity, I mean from a member from the FinCom, a member from the Public Safety, a member from the Groton Dunstable, their capital planning committee, and possibly for housing. And because we need to have representatives on this, if you decide to have a committee such as this, representatives from the diverse needs of the town. The major expenses in our budgets are the public safety in our schools, not to mention the building. So, but it would require, I feel that a committee would be effective on the long run in order to have the diversity of these representatives be part of that meeting. And I'm relying as well on the strategic planning committee that had been formed in the 80s and the projects that resulted from that and how they did meet the diverse needs of the town at that time. We completely redid restored and redid the town hall. We built the new public safety building, what was then the new public safety building, the police station and the public safety. We built 2 major affordable housing units, the Pettapawag and the, at Willowdale as well as Pettapawag. We recruited the monies for those buildings. We've had state funds and federal funds for those buildings. We located those buildings. We relocated the highway department. We also redid the library. And those were all done through a planning organized planning mechanism that we did ourselves. And we went out and got the funding for these projects, and we went out and had the donated land for these projects. So, but one of the effective aspects of it was that it was a diverse representation of the different areas of town, and it was required that the members come from the planning board, the finance committee, the public safety, and housing. So that's what I'm asking and recommending and suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
I'm solidly where Bud is at.
Pardon?
I am solidly where you are at, you and the finance committee are at. I've got a lot of concerns about what was sent out for you to review. And I look at things like statements that says, respond to requests from the board to evaluate service enhancements expected to impact the town operating budget by more than $30,000 in a single year. It's like you're gonna take almost all the financial decisions that need to be made and try and run them through this third party, leaving out, well, what's the finance, and what do the selectmen do? Do we need them anymore? If you're gonna have somebody looking at a $30,000 expenditure. So the original plan here had, I think, when it was put together, a broader view than what I'm thinking of and what the finance committee is thinking of relative to a capital planning organization. And I think the integration that Bud is talking about, I don't necessarily know, well, I would like an opportunity to help do a little tweaking on what the finance committee came up with, particularly around definitions of things and names for things, so it can be really clear, you know, or a lot clearer than it is now where it goes. But I cannot support the first version of this. I can support with a little fine tuning the finance committee's recommendation, and I think we should support that.
Yeah, I want to respond more to Anna's comment initially than to Bud's and Art's comments. In terms of, should we put this committee together regardless if it's the one that's proposed currently or the Capital Planning Advisory Committee as proposed in the changes? I don't think in any way, shape, or fashion it should have a member of the FinCom on it, or should have a member of the Board of Selectmen or the Groton Dunstable School Committee. I think that we need to have a separate set of eyes and ears with people that have strong, solid financial backgrounds, as well as, you know, people who work within the trades or bidding projects. And I really think that an independent lens through 5 other individuals that currently aren't elected or appointed would be better served. So that's just addressing that issue at the moment. Unless you want me to go to the next one, but I'd love to hear from John. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, I had a problem with the $30,000 figure. I just see it getting bogged down because I'm just thinking, well, how many times do we buy cruisers, Mark?
Every year,
And how much do they cost?
about
50 apiece.
Yeah.
60 apiece. Now they're
Yeah,
getting very
so we
expensive.
gotta talk, that committee's gonna have to look at every purchase of a cruiser, fire boots, I think they're up around there, just to get boots, so we're gonna get,
It didn't dawn on me too, you'd have to look at health insurance every year,
you know,
because that goes up more than $30,000 each year.
I got a problem with the capital one, I get it. I also agree, the capital program one. Because that's what I'm hearing all the time from people with the DPW building, with the library roof. They're saying, how come we didn't know any of this was going on? And I don't know that 5 other people, I kind of agree. I don't like task force anyway. I got a big problem with them, particularly with the experience I had. I just thought it bogged everything down. Nothing happened. It caused a lot of discourse. I understand that people are worried about the expenditures. They're worried about the money. I kept hearing the word personnel, which is the biggest operating expense, and I think people get really worried about and bogged down with that. And I've been told that, you know, because I came from the Call Fire Department, that I'm just going to keep wanting to hire firefighters. That's couldn't be farther from the truth. I pay my taxes also. We have to look at it. We have to use the process in place. And there's the town meeting. It's the process in place. People get to voice their opinions on it. We get to discuss it. The FinCom, I think they do a pretty good job. If all 6 of them are opposed to this, then I do have a little bit of a problem with it. And that $30,000 figure, if that can be changed, that's a huge problem for me. The $30,000, it's huge. It's a small amount of money.
So is there a, just to jump in here, is there a figure that, because $30,000, yeah, maybe it's too low, but maybe we should raise that? Is there a figure that would make more sense?
With
Well,
me,
You know, what would the number be?
Well, when we
How
were,
many
we,
million
we,
dollars to have to
pardon?
pay?
When
How
we were
many
looking at,
million dollars?
well, capital's different, but operating, we were looking at something that was like excess of 50,000 a year or 100,000 cumulative over 3 years.
Right.
So if you had a 40, because you don't want to have it, you know, you need to see how much the total impact is. So it'd be 50,000, which is basically a person, if you added a
So
person.
this isn't capital, it's growth of.
No, this is, I'm addressing the operating side,
Right,
not the capital
right.
side. The capital side to me
Well, I
would be
understand
whatever
that.
goes in the capital budget, because you want to do an inventory of all the stuff and what do you have in the capital budget and what cars roll through all the time. Are they the right amount of time you turn them in? I think that's what this committee should do.
Well, that's partly where my concern for these definitions comes from.
Yeah.
Because I've heard the words minor capital thrown around. I've heard capital thrown around.
Right.
I've written something that
Well, Mark
tried to
has those
define
definitions.
capital, right? Then I found out that we put in all kinds of information when we go to bond things. And the treasurer has another definition of what's capital because he has to put the value of the capital into the bond applications. So we fixed that, and I think people are gonna be focused better on where we want them to be focused on. I don't think turning this over to yet another committee, which is what's asked for here, makes any sense at all.
Which
Well,
part of it? The
I think
capital one
we
or the
are-
other?
No, the capital one I'm fine with.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the operational one I'm fine with. The capital one that was proposed, as opposed to what you've talked about, is the one I don't support. I support what you talked about.
Okay. Can I, Allison, can I address
Yeah.
Josh's
We're gonna
comment?
go Bud, Josh, or.
Well, Josh, no, I agree with Josh. I think you want the best athlete here. You know, if you go to the capital planning, you want the best athletes you can do that. You want capital planning people, you want construction people, you want finance people, you need the best. You don't want a school committee member. A FinCom member, if there happen to be capital, you do need a finance person, so I think, so you might want a FinCom member. You don't have to have one though. It shouldn't be, you have to have one of these, one of these, one of these. If a FinCom member pops up and says, hey, they're good, if a school committee member happens to be a good operational person, but they shouldn't be dictated. They should be, go get the best athlete. I think that's what we were saying. And
That's all I'm saying.
we said that the other night. We don't want to make a list of these check mark, these people have to be on it. But they can come from those committees, but they have to fit the qualification.
It doesn't preclude somebody from those
Right.
committees putting their name in.
Right.
But rather than mandating that it
Right.
comes from those committees.
That's right.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree. We
Can
agreed
I,
with that as well. We voted that as well. We
Excellent
agreed with that
vote.
comment you had, please.
Josh.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with something. So, bottom line is, getting back to this $30,000 figure and something that John said. Look, we're talking specifically, it says in number 5 here, respond to request from the board. That means to respond from a request from our board to evaluate service enhancements. Okay, it's not a cruiser for $40,000. It might be adding an additional cruiser above and beyond the 2 that we replace on a yearly basis. It might be adding a new maintenance person to take care of our facilities, to staff that doesn't currently exist. These are for new proposals. And I think that, you know, and the FinCom's been doing a great job, and obviously the shortcomings with the process were identified by Bud in terms of making a capital plan, in terms of looking at how many vehicles we have, buildings, the condition, the various things, and enhancing that. That could be done by a capital planning committee. But we set as a board a goal to put together this major initiative planning committee. And in the course of doing so, over a couple years, it took to get a charge together. I don't see how it could hurt the town in any way, shape, or fashion to move forward with what was proposed. And if after a year or two, the groundwork is laid to do an evaluation by this committee of all of our assets in terms of trucks, cars, building conditions, and various things along those lines. And there wasn't playing fields, and there wasn't a need for this committee. I have no problem with abolishing it and rolling it over into the capital planning committee as you proposed. But I've just, and you both brought up the issues of surprises. I'm sick and tired of the surprises. A $7.5 million water treatment plant. I won't say the fire station was a surprise because we talked about it for 10 years. I certainly won't say that the senior center was a surprise because we talked about that for 15 years. But all of a sudden, the highway garage, it was a surprise, big surprise, okay? And not that it wasn't needed. It absolutely is needed. But a committee like this can then look and weigh everything from things we're talking about for capital to additional employees, to additional equipment, to additional cruisers, to playing fields that are gonna need to be updated and various things. There's no downside to this. So while I certainly respect where you folks are coming from, and I'm sorry I didn't come in earlier to your meeting the other night, but I was dealing with my own little storm behind my house up with the Board of Health, and wish I had had time to be in there to debate this with you. I'm not gonna change my mind.
Well, 80% of what you talked about, Josh, is capital. That's what we just talked.
We need this
That's what we don't
committee.
have. Everything you said, though, was capital. That's what the
But
capital.
it doesn't harm anything to include more. What we're saying is the committee can get to work. If they come back and they say, you know, it's really too much work, you should not ask us to do both of these things, we can consider it. And frankly, I think the capital, everybody recognizes that the capital is gonna be the big focus.
It is.
But there's no downside to including this additional piece that should we as a board be faced with a question that we would like a little bit more guidance from, a little bit more expertise to weigh in on, an upgrade in some department that I'm willing to raise the number from 30,000 if that
Yeah.
would please people. I think we should leave it as we wrote it, as we voted it, give it a try, and see, first of all, if we get 11 applicants, see what kind of expertise we have, let them get to work on it, and let them come back and say to us, you know, we decided we're gonna prioritize, this is how we're gonna do it. Like, I would really like us to proceed in that direction.
I was almost finished before Becky commented. I have one more thing to say. Well, at least one.
No, one, you have one.
One?
Use it wisely.
Thank you. So Bud had pointed out about how if a certain initiative came up, how we could appoint another committee. Well, having witnessed the fire committee task force in evaluating going to 24/7, I believe that this committee with the appropriate personnel placed on the committee could be dealing with an issue like that should we ever have to increase that department or any other department sizes. And I hope I used it wisely.
Yes, alright.
Can you scroll up a little bit? I want to clarify. $30,000 is services, i.e. operation, correct?
It's
Not
down,
capital.
you have to scroll scroll down, actually.
Whichever direction.
No, it's right there.
It's right there. Item 5.
Operating budget by more than $30,000, so it's not capital, right?
Correct.
Okay. I think if you go along with the original proposal, it's gonna lead to all kinds of issues going forward. It's gonna lead to morass and all kinds of political things going on. And Josh, you mentioned the fire department committee, that task force. That was hijacked, you know it was. It was hijacked with
I'm not
one
talking
intent.
about
We're
whether
not-
it's
we're
hijacked
not-
or not hijacked. I
Okay.
was trying
All
to.
We
right.
are
This is-
not
alright.
going to get into the fire
Okay.
task force committee.
All right, if you go forward with this, okay, I'm resigning from the finance committee. You don't need us, you don't need a finance committee. So, I'm out.
All right. Yes, John.
I heard Josh and Becky talking about there's no downside to this. I have to respond and say I don't see any upside to it. In fact, I don't understand when somebody's contemplating perhaps trying to do something new that the town hasn't really done before, and that's have an outside entity beyond the finance committee get into operating issues. That you'd start at the very bottom. How about if we got something in place to deal with the major capital expenditures? And if that goes well, you can always bring down the amount that has to go through that committee. But starting from the bottom up on something we've never tried before, we could go into chaos with this stuff. And I'm serious about that. We only got a finite number of days every year to put a budget together. And it isn't 12 months, because summer around here is very quiet. People are away. So, we're really looking at 10 months maybe, best case. I just don't see where the upside is in putting a committee in the middle of operating budget items. We don't need it right now. Let's get the capital thing squared away. That's what this started on, I believe. I wasn't here for the 2 years that Josh made reference to, so I'm unadvised about any of those discussions that went on. I just read what's here. And we don't need to do it. We need to get the capital thing, the major expenditures, under control. And we need to do a better job of looking ahead on where we may see significant increases in operational spending. And Bud has described a way to do that. And it's logical. It's not something that's never been tried before. It's rational, and that's the way we ought to go. I had people call me over the weekend, one person in particular, who first suggested that the people on the select board weren't competent to look at these kind of issues. I suggested that I didn't think that was very complimentary. And then the person started talking about how, like with the firefighters, we need to figure out what the cost of a life is worth. Give me a break. Cost of a life is worth. And then I said, you're saying you want to see the data for all this stuff. And I said, well, how many points to the right of the decimal point? How many places to the right of the decimal point do you want to see everything run out to? Because in my head, what I'm thinking that person's thought is, let's go chase pi. Let's figure out what the last number of pi is before we make a decision. And it doesn't make any sense.
Allison?
Yeah.
I appreciate that there's a lot of passion about this. I'm going to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with our original charge to the Major Initiative Planning Committee with one revision, that we change the $30,000 figure to $50,000.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. So I don't think we need to have a ton of discussion. At this point, I'm feeling kind of up in the air, which is not helpful to anyone. I think that, you know, what part of what has happened here is that the finance committee and the select board have identified a couple areas that need a little more work, and we've both come forward at the same time with potential solutions. I think that both are well intended. At this point, I'm inclined and comfortable if the chair of the finance committee is assuring us that you're gonna get a better handle on some of the longer term operating items, that I'm inclined to kind of give you guys a year or so and see what comes out of that, creating perhaps now the capital committee. You know, I think part of the quandary in my mind is figuring out how actively the select board potentially and the finance committee should be in creating these priorities and setting them and moving forward with them. You know, and I, as an individual, I feel like that process isn't as effective as I would like it to be. But I think that's potentially something else that we can work on, you know, with the finance committee and the town manager, as we move forward. So, does anyone else have final words? Yeah, Josh.
So when we put our goals together to create this, what was called the MICA committee, which is now the municipal planning committee, initiatives, and that's the key word in there, is initiatives, new initiatives. We voted unanimously, A, to make that a goal. B, if I recall, wasn't it just 3 or 4 weeks ago that this board voted 5-0 to establish this committee? And all of a sudden, and please don't take this the wrong way, FinCom members, you get some pushback from the FinCom because it asserts that this committee, or they assert that this committee isn't needed. And we're saying that, and I've seen your frustration, Allison, over the years when something pops up out of nowhere. This is something that's gonna look at things different than the budget that you folks look at and establish. This is new initiatives, and it specifically says by direction of the board. If this thing isn't working out and it's creating conflict and it isn't giving benefits, I'll be the first one to say, hey, we made a huge mistake here and we should disband this committee. But I think that we need to do things differently than what we've done, and I really wish that the board members would remember the conversations that led to the creation of this committee, and not necessarily ignore what the finance committee members are saying and what they voted on, but we're the elected officials. It's incumbent upon us to make decisions that are in the best interest of the town, that serve the town for the long term. And the FinCom's not elected, okay? These other folks aren't elected, they're appointed by us. And the bottom line is that we are the policy setters of this town, and I think it's a huge mistake not to support this.
John.
I want to point out that it was right after I got on the board that this initiative was put on the list of things to do. And it sat, and it sat, and it sat for months. No discussion, nothing happening. All of a sudden, oh, we've got to do it, and we've got to do it right now. So Mark and Josh went off and wrote something up, and they brought it in for us to approve. That whole process stinks, okay? There should have been a process that laid that out many months ago, got the finance committee and looking at it, working together with them to come up with something. This came out of nowheres.
No, that's not true, John.
That is true, absolutely
let's
true.
settle it down a notch,
We
guys.
did nothing for over
John,
8
settle
months
it down.
on this topic, nothing. And then 2 months ago, it became crisis, we gotta do it, we gotta do it. And 2 people went off and wrote something and brought it into the board. As far as I'm concerned, we were approving this thing going to the finance committee to take a look at, not to approve implementation of this thing.
Okay, but before, you are correct that nothing happened for
That's right, thank
6
you.
to 8 months. However, the year before that,
I was
we-
not here.
I know, so you don't
don't know anything
So
about
it's
that.
wrong to say that nothing happened and it came out of nowhere, because the year before, we had put together a proposal. It was discussed. I honestly don't remember why it did not proceed at that point. It was discussed with the finance committee.
The capital one,
The capital one,
right,
yes.
not this one.
Yep.
Yes, and then, so then it came back again this year with a slight revision. And we did vote
It's a different
unanimously for
ballpark.
it.
It's a different ballgame that you're talking about now.
Well,
So we
This is
have,
brand new.
we have a motion on the table to move forward with the
major
select board version
initiative.
prior to the most recent finance committee modifications or suggested modifications.
With a change from the $30,000 amount to $50,000.
Correct. Correct. So I think for this, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote, just for clarity.
I'm happy to begin. Nay.
Deegan, aye.
Pine, aye.
Riley, nay.
This is what I was afraid
It
of.
all falls to you, Allison.
Manugian, nay. I think that while the intent was good, that at this point, perhaps Bud and Mark and I, as the chairs, should take a look at this, kind of take this new information we have that the finance committee is committed to adding on a couple steps and come back with something.
Is the finance, the red line revision that was presented to us tonight, but you said this is the same as what we had talked about a year and a half ago?
With a couple minor tweaks, there was a 6 added in, or whatever Mark added in on.
99% the same.
Yeah, it is. Right. There's one
It
extra, a
really
couple
is.
minor things that were added in. But it was basically the same one.
So why do we, I mean, I just, we need to get this committee in place. We need to know what the charge is gonna be. Is there, maybe we should just accept this.
This is what it is, except for like a couple, it was advised versus, that's it. And then there was, you added in the town.
Well, so, Allison, what are you proposing? That who's gonna revise
I
it?
am proposing that I, as the chair of the select board, Bud as the chair of the finance committee, and Mark would get together and review this. It's possible that we could bring it back next week or the week after exactly as it stands. I think it's more likely that we would tweak a couple things here and there. And then,
And your purpose in tweaking would be to bring in a little bit of the operating new initiatives or not?
I don't, personally, at this point, I don't know. When we came up with our draft charge, we were addressing, in part,
It wasn't a draft, let's just say we did approve that in a five,
when we drafted our charge,
right.
I hadn't heard anything about the finance committee committing to kind of this new process, adding in a few more robust steps and making some changes on their own. Now that they're committed to doing that, you know, I'm willing to give them that shot and potentially add a capital planning advisory committee, you know, for the next year or so and seeing how it goes.
Yeah, no, if that's the direction we're gonna take, I don't know how much more time we need to,
And I don't know what harm another week or two is.
so, but we would have to approve a charge and make sure that the 11 applicants are still interested, or do we have to open it up again and it delays
Open it up again.
I
appointing?
think we would
What I
have to
would-
open it up again.
Yeah, what I would suggest, if you're gonna change the charge, we would advertise it again with the new charge.
Mhm.
Make it the same people, I don't know.
So
Absolutely.
can you send a letter to those 11 people, letting them know?
We're gonna
that
let them know now. We
Yeah.
told them the 23rd, now we'll tell them, hang on, things are changing.
So is the board, is there consensus that we could take a week or two, Bud and Mark and I can discuss this and potentially come forward with this or a tweaked version thereof?
Do you
I
mind
certainly,
if I interject in this?
I certainly think, you know, given the importance of this, that we can take 2 weeks to spend some time and seriously think about it.
Do you mind if I sat down with Mark and Bud, because this was the
No.
goal that I was charged with? Maybe we can hammer out a compromise?
I'm more than happy if you wanna take that on.
I would be happy to take that.
Yep. All right. So we'll be
I'll
back
bring
with
it back
this
on
in
the
a couple
23rd.
weeks. Thank you.
Back to the town manager's report, which I'm sure everybody is sitting around waiting to hear.
Thank you, guys.
Item number 4 is the board is aware we're in the process of applying for green community status with the Commonwealth. One of the things we need to do for our application is have the select board adopt a fuel efficient vehicle policy. I've given you the proposed policy that was drafted by the state. It begins on page 27 of your packet. I'm sure you've had a chance to review it and read it. I've asked the school superintendent to adopt it as well, and I'd ask the board to consider adopting that tonight.
So Mark, can you kind of explain to us, I've read this.
Yep.
Kind of in a nutshell, what does this mean? What are we committing to looking at?
It's just basically saying any vehicle that's over, I think it's 8,500 or 9,500 gross vehicle weight, that is being used for something other than emergency, fire and police vehicles are excluded. We will buy an energy efficient vehicle.
And what does an energy efficient vehicle mean?
It would be something, I mean, probably, what do they have those now with the split between electricity and?
It's a hybrid.
Yeah, hybrid, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word.
So,
Thank you,
so
Josh.
what, and I'm sorry that I'm having
No,
trouble
please,
grasping
that's
this.
okay.
What vehicles would we currently be talking about? I mean, is this
Probably
like,
our 1 ton, probably our 1 ton and 2 ton, 1 ton and bigger dump trucks.
so is there such thing as a Prius dump truck? I don't, like, what are we looking for?
A Prius dump truck is a
I
pretty
don't-
good idea. There are
I'm not
things on
sure
the
it
state
is.
bid list, no, there are things on the state bid list that would qualify for this. I will tell you, the new police cruisers that we're buying this year are hybrid.
There are trucks out there that are biodiesel, which basically you take and you change the engine, and a friend of mine actually has one. They converted the engine over so it runs on used fryer-later oil. And when you go behind the vehicle, it smells like French fries. It's not a joke. It really does.
Do you get hungry for
it?
it?
It really does. So at any rate, so they're alternative fuels, is what it is, for larger things. But you can't put a hybrid electric engine in a larger vehicle at the moment.
So are these kind of cutting edge vehicles like that, or are there kind of standard?
There's some standard vehicles out there that have it. There are standard vehicles. I know when I worked for the town of Stratford, we purchased a dump truck, similar to what Josh was talking about. It was very fuel efficient, and it operated normal like any other dump truck that was out there.
You said you got this from the state?
The state, this is
and
the state policy.
What other green communities have used?
Correct.
So there's nothing, we're not breaking new ground?
We are absolutely not breaking new ground.
And unless you do this, you're not gonna move forward on the,
Oh, we need to do this or we can't file our
or
green
you're not
community
gonna file
application.
your green
As a matter of fact,
communities.
Alice, you remember when,
Karen?
no,
Kelly Brown?
Kelly Brown. When Kelly Brown came out, she talked to us about that this is one of the first things that we needed to do when she came out and introduced the whole green community concept to us.
Absolutely, and I still don't, I don't feel like I understand in the big picture all the things that we are committing to. And part of my concern is that we're going to commit to something under the auspices of, oh, we have to do this to move forward with the program.
Yep.
And then we're gonna get caught at some point having committed to something that's a tremendous expense
I'm
that we didn't recognize.
very
So-
fair point. I'm not overly concerned with adopting this policy, given some of the exemptions and exclusions that are within the policy. Which I think John has. If you go
Okay.
to page 28 in the packet, it has the exemptions for the vehicles.
Yeah, so any of the emergency vehicles.
Fire trucks,
exempt.
ambulance, and some public works trucks that meet the definition of heavy-duty vehicle is exempted. So a lot of our public works trucks are the big heavy-duty dump trucks, which would be excluded, so I wasn't overly concerned about that. Our fire trucks are excluded, our ambulances are excluded. So, police cruisers, large passenger vans are exempt for the criteria, fuel-efficient models as well. but we can commit to saying we would purchase fuel-efficient police cruisers, which we are doing already even before we adopted this policy. So I'm not worried that we're committing to something that's going to be expensive or hamper our operations. I believe we're already taking some steps to comply with this policy even before we adopted it.
So
That's my point.
My question was just to make sure that any department heads that are affected understand this and
They absolutely do. We've talked about it a
they've
lot.
given the okay. They're
Tom Delaney, the three department heads that this affects are Tom Delaney, Mike Luth, and Steele McCurdy. Doesn't affect Steele. Tom Delaney understands it and understands most of his stuff is exempt, and the stuff that isn't exempt, he will make the effort. And the police department is already purchasing those hybrid police cruisers. As a matter of fact, I will have a demonstration of those. When they come out, we'll make sure, they're on delivery, we haven't received them yet.
More
Have you
money?
received them yet? No.
They more money?
No, actually, what was more money was the actual outfitting of the vehicles, because the body style did change. Regular police cruisers and the hybrid all went up at the same amount of money. So, no, there's not more money that we're paying for it.
John?
I would think that the Green Communities Committee would review all these proposed purchases of vehicles
Sure.
and determine whether we're in sync or not in sync as a part of the process of getting to talking about where we're gonna find the money to buy X or Y.
it's
I
only
understand
when-
your concerns, Allison, but I think there's enough exemptions in there that covers us, and I think we're already moving in that direction with some of the purchases that we're making.
and it only applies in the regular rotation of replacing vehicles.
That is correct.
So does someone wanna make a motion?
I move that what do you need?
Fuel-efficient vehicle
We
policy.
adopt the fuel-efficient vehicle policy for the town of Groton, and we can't adopt it for the regional school district. They have
No,
to-
the school
No.
superintendent has to do that.
I move that we adopt the town of Groton fuel-efficient vehicle policy.
Second.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Speaking of policies, Allison, Melissa, Dawn, and I have begun the process of reviewing board policies. I had the pleasure of inundating Allison over the weekend with all the policies, but we've taken town council's proposed edits. We've gone through all of the policies. We've put them into Word form. Those that are old that aren't in Word form, thanks to Dawn's hard work, we were able to put those in Word form. I've gone through them and redlined them. Alice and I are scheduled to meet Friday morning. We're gonna sit in this room, put them up on the screen, go through them again, make additional edits, put them in some sort of order so that we all understand what we're doing. And then what I would suggest to the board is we schedule a workshop out a couple of weeks, I would say. Well,
Probably.
maybe we get to item number 7, we can pick a date.
Yep.
We schedule a workshop so that we can sort of finalize what we want to do with the policies. It was a major undertaking, and I want to thank Dawn and Allison for all the work they're doing on this, because it is a lot of work. There were 59
59 attachments, yes indeed.
59 different policies that we have. I've set up a folder that has all of them in it. We're gonna try to refine the way they're set up so that they're all the same. We haven't done that yet, but at least we have them in Word
Assign
form.
numbers to them.
Assign numbers to them. We'll renumber them now.
Number all pages.
Yes, well, most of them are one page long, but
Put a
we'll
date on them,
Yep.
which the version is.
We'll
please.
renumber them, and we'll do all that sort of fun stuff, and we'll bring that to the board for you to look at in a workshop and make any changes you want to make. So, maybe when we get to item 7, Allison,
Yep,
we can talk about that.
So
Which, by the way, we're going to go to next.
are we setting a date for that workshop?
That's what I want to do under item number 7. But I wanted to let you know where we were. So, here we are in item 7. One of the goals of the board is to receive a proposed schedule and list of anticipated topics for future meetings. So I'm giving you a proposed schedule and list of topics for future meetings. So what we have here is we're gonna meet next week, and we're gonna review the fall town meeting warrant. We were going to interview and appoint members to the Major Capital Planning Committee. Obviously, you changed that tonight, so that's off. On September 23rd, we're gonna meet. You're gonna finalize the warrant, take positions on the various articles. September 30th, we're not going to meet. That is the Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah. We traditionally do not meet on that date. What I was going to suggest for a workshop date is October 2nd, which would be that Wednesday as the workshop date, beginning at 6. That is my suggestion. We can meet here, we can meet downstairs on the big table, we go to Legion Hall, we can do whatever the board would like to do, but I would suggest, we wouldn't televise the workshop, obviously, but it's open to the public, it's a posted meeting of the board. But I'm suggesting October 2nd for the
That works
workshop,
for me.
beginning at 6.
Does that work for other people?
I'm good with that.
Doesn't work for me.
Oh, it doesn't, oh, you're gone
You're
anyway.
gone.
You were gonna miss that meeting regardless. So when are you, wait a minute, this is something that all 5 of you should be at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take back that suggestion. I'm sorry, John, I forgot you were gone. When are you back?
I'm back for the meeting on the 7th. I'll be here, the 7th of October.
Now, the reason on the topic for the 7th, originally, in the original schedule, the select board was supposed to meet with the finance committee on September 30th to set the goals. That can't happen now. So I pushed it off until the 7th. To meet with the finance committee to set your goals for FY '21. So we're a week behind, but can't help it because of the holiday. So I guess,
Unless, can you move that up to the 23rd?
I'm not gonna be ready
Okay,
for the 23rd. I'm meeting with the tri-board that morning.
yeah, okay.
And then I have to get it to the FinCom. The FinCom has to take a week or 2 to meet and discuss it, and then come back to the board. I was gonna give you whatever the tri-board did on the 23rd, and then give you 2 weeks to think about it, so that when you met with the FinCom on either the 30th or the 7th, you were ready to go. So I'm not gonna be ready on the 23rd, Becky.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Please.
It sounds like the finance committee talks about their budget goals as a group prior to this meeting with us. I feel like personally, we should probably be doing the same.
Well, that's what I was gonna suggest we do on the 23rd. And then meet on the 7th with the finance committee. That was my
So we'll take
proposal.
warrant positions, the select board will discuss budget goals.
We'll add budget goals to the agenda of the 23rd, as well as finalize and take positions on the various articles for the warrant. There could be more than one agenda topic, obviously, as we're
Okay.
proving tonight.
Yeah, I was wondering whether we wanted to do that budget goal discussion in a workshop in conjunction with policy.
Oh, but John won't be here, that's the problem.
I'm not saying that October 2nd is the date.
But sometimes budget goal, should include public input. Doesn't have to.
I absolutely, I agree it does need to include public input. My concern is that when we go into that meeting with the finance committee and we as a board haven't hashed out our budget goals, everyone suffers.
Right,
And I
so,
do mean
So can't we
suffers.
do that on the 23rd?
okay, we do that on the 23rd?
Sure, I felt like it would probably be more comfortable in a workshop setting, but we can absolutely do it on the 23rd.
Right, so we don't have a date for a workshop.
That's what we're working on.
That's what we're working on.
Need a workshop to work on it.
Yeah, we need a workshop.
How about,
I mean, does Wednesday the 9th work for people? I don't know what,
or can we back up to Wednesday, the September 25th? Does that work?
That's why I did that.
Wednesday, the
No.
9th looks like it's Yom
Just
Kippur.
That's why it doesn't work.
the 25th of September?
Does Wednesday, the 25th of September work for a workshop?
Not for John?
Doesn't work for
No,
me.
he's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. You're gonna be away 2 weeks.
I am.
Okay.
The workshop couldn't be pushed out to, the Tuesday after, Columbus Day, the
I'm not,
15th?
I'm not available that night.
We can't do that night.
I got a conflict that night.
So Wednesday the 9th is out,
Yes.
okay? Thursday the 10th?
Yeah,
It's okay for me.
maybe.
And that's gonna be to review the,
Policies.
Policies, okay.
No.
That gives you and I a little more
I
time.
can't do Thursday the 10th, I apologize.
10:10.
It's already blocked out in my schedule.
About Thursday, the 17th of October?
Let me ask a question. How, Allison, you and I are going to be, putting all the policies in some sort of semblance. I'm gonna get them out to the board way in advance of any workshop so that they have all of them before them.
Yep.
with the proposed edits, how much time do you think we're going to need for the workshop? An hour, 2 hours? 2
I would
hours?
anticipate that this group would need a significant amount of time
Okay.
to review all of our policies.
Okay.
All 50 of them.
We have 59
59, okay.
policies.
Some of them are really basic. Some of them are really, there were
I
some.
don't think I found any that I haven't changed yet.
Actually,
Oh, really?
you have 60 policies. You just
Yeah,
approved
I-
the
We just
fuel efficient
approved
vehicle
it.
policy.
Well, I was gonna suggest
Which
maybe.
I have issues with
It has,
already.
it has all the feelings in my mind for another one of these things that goes till 2:30 in the morning.
Well, that, and I
Okay.
personally, I think probably like a Saturday morning
Oh,
kind of
I-
thing makes more sense,
I
but
would do that if you have
I don't have a
to.
problem with that.
Yeah, but
I don't if I'm here.
you're not here on the 5th of October, is that correct, John?
That's correct, I don't
He
get
does
back
not return until the
6th.
7th.
I'm
Yeah.
back to work on the 7th.
Saturday the 12th.
Of October?
Mm-hmm.
that's Columbus Day weekend.
All right, Saturday the 19th, right before town meeting.
No, I'm not available.
So we're
I
back
give
to
up. Tell
Thursday,
me when.
Thursday night,
gonna be in Maine.
October
I know,
17th.
I know.
Did we hear Thursday, October
There's
17th?
something
Would you pay attention? Thursday, October 17th?
Listening to. Guess what I've highlighted?
I've been paying attention, that's my
Thursday, October
problem.
17th.
I'm not here on the 7th.
For this?
John's not available on the
John's not here.
17th.
That's a Friday.
Thursday,
All right, let me ask
October
everybody a question.
17th.
Let me ask everybody a question.
Thursday, October 17th.
All right, let me ask everybody a
Thursday,
question.
I'm okay.
Is anybody available this coming Saturday?
No,
Yes,
So
There we
close.
go.
I have my rescheduled stink party.
All right,
Can we look again at Thursday, the 17th of October?
I think we got a
No,
yes.
Josh said John's not available.
But he
No,
said, he said no,
Thursday
he's
the
not, but it's a Friday, so.
Oh,
No, I think we're good. I'm good on Thursday, October 17th. You're good?
Yes, good.
Yes.
Good. You're good. John?
Did
I'm good.
6 PM?
6 PM.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Mark's bringing lasagna?
I'm gonna bring something.
And I like the idea of meeting in
That was the 17th, yes?
the Legion Hall, like, away from,
You know what, we've been saying for like the last 4 years, or 5 years, that we should have a meeting over at the Lost Lake Fire Station.
yeah, but
What's that look
the
like?
whole point of
Council
doing
on
that
Aging's
is
over
to,
there
Not
right
well, it's
now,
the
so
senior
a little-
center.
is to
Yeah.
invite other people to come, and we are wanting this to be
When does the senior
a
center open?
workshop.
October 22nd.
No, we found one date that we can all make it.
All
We're
right.
Days after
doing
the
this.
highway.
Right, so October
17th.
17th, 6 o'clock, Legion Hall.
Very good.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes, Connie?
Quick question,
Yeah.
I assume the workshop is open to the public?
Oh, it's a posted meeting of the board, absolutely. Has to be.
But there's no public input.
There may or may not be. We'll come up
Well,
with
isn't
that.
that
That's
usually the
chair's-
definition?
Well,
I know.
that's our tradition, but it is the chair's call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that works well with the,
But wait a minute, let me just clarify something. You said you're gonna send us all the policies
way in
ahead of
advance of
time,
the 17th.
and that means they could go to anyone who asked ahead of time?
Connie will get them in advance too, she'd like.
And
Anybody that wants to see
public
them.
feedback could come to us beforehand and would be fine.
You will post them on the website so that,
Well, I guess I could do that, but the policies are all gonna be redlined. I would not wanna post, I
I
just have a
think it
problem
makes
with
more
that.
sense for us to come up with a draft version, like a collective red line, then post it, get public input, potentially even have a public hearing if folks wanted to formalize that,
Which will be
and
on,
then do that.
the 28th of October, unless town meeting
Yeah.
goes an extra week.
I think that
Sounds good.
Okay, so the board sees the rest of the schedule, the Monday, November 4th, Monday, November 18th, Monday, November 25th, the Monday after Thanksgiving. I'm putting it out early because I know there was an issue last year when I suggested we don't meet on that day, but we could put it as a to be determined if you want to do that. And then the 9th, the 16th, the 23rd, we traditionally don't meet between Christmas and New Year. And then on the 20th of January 6th, 2020, will be the presentation of the proposed 21 operating budget.
So, I would like to warn the board, I will not be here on Monday, November 18th. I'll be out of town. And I would also like us to look at the Monday, December 23rd, I will not be able to be here for that meeting.
There were some years, Becky, that we go 2 weeks around the holidays, not meeting, so it's whatever the board's pleasure is, obviously.
I mean, I think we probably need to revisit that in early December.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, but just warning you that I won't be here.
Yeah.
If I can go now into the ongoing issues list, I have a bunch of updates for the board, if that's okay.
I hope they are succinct.
You know me, Allison, always. Senior Center building project is winding down. It looks like we are on target for October 22nd, as Josh asked earlier. So that continues to move forward. With regards to the town hall renovations, we are making great progress. If you noticed today when you came in, our offices have been carpeted, the town accountant's offices have been carpeted. The new kitchen equipment has been installed. It is our hope to be moved back into this building, Dawn and I and Patricia and Sarah, by Wednesday. Melissa should be moved upstairs on Wednesday. So the trailers hopefully be gone by the end of this week. There is still some final painting and stuff that has to be done, and then the only thing that would be done after that would be the hardwood floors. So we are winding down the town hall renovation project, and I want to thank Dawn and Patricia, Sarah and Melissa. You know, they've been sort of out of sorts for the last 2 months, actually more than 2 months, right? More than 2 months, and I'm looking forward to getting back in the town hall myself.
When are the new water fountains getting installed?
We're not putting in water fountains. We have we have,
No
Bottles.
bubbles?
no, we have bottles, bottled
Big
water.
bottles.
Big
What-
bottled
what is-
water.
So the floors are still gonna have to be done,
Yes,
Weekends.
weekends,
weekend,
yes.
so that won't disrupt.
That will not disrupt town activities.
Okay.
Yep, that'll be done outside of the normal operating hours.
Okay.
With regards to the Prescott, I already gave you an update on that. The water department, I sent you an email on Friday. There's gonna be a meeting with DEP, I believe, on September 25th. At 10 o'clock, I will plan on attending that meeting, representing the board, and we'll have more updates. Yes, Josh?
So, on this water department issue, to
Yep.
build a new treatment facility is what's being discussed, to address the issues with the iron and manganese, correct?
Well,
Correct.
to do that, plus run 2 pipes down Route 40 for over a mile.
Okay, so, but we're talking about a $7+ potentially $1 million project, correct?
$7.5 million, according to what Tom told us.
And that would be borne completely by the ratepayers, or would there be a town share in that?
My understanding as of right now, totally borne by the ratepayers. There would be no town expense.
I would love to see that in writing if we could get that.
Okay.
Well, I
I asked last week that we get a model built that
Right.
shows what the impact would be with an estimated, say it's an estimate of $7.5 million. Over so many years, what would we be paying on an annual basis? And then put that into the model and see what it's gonna do to the price per gallon.
And that was in Allison's letter to the Water Commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we invite them in on the 7th of October after the DEP meeting
Yes.
to give us
good
an
idea.
update? I was not personally content with the 6-month delay, and I'm not feeling any more informed now.
Well, and I think that the question of whether the entire cost should be borne by the ratepayers is something that bears some discussion.
What other updates do you have for us?
Green Communities application implementation. The original application date was October 1st. That has been pushed off to October 31st. So we have hired Rise Engineering to do the energy audit. It is underway as we speak. Karen Chapman, we received a state grant, so we're well on our way to getting that application in on October 31st. I'm very excited about that. We talked about F, we talked about, there's no update on G, the charter approval implementation.
Can H be changed to crosswalk, please?
Right, 19,
It's not a
crosswalk.
sidewalk
You're right, it's
installation, am I
crosswalk
correct?
installation.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
at this point it is.
Yep, you're right, Josh. Florence Roach Elementary School project. I met today with the team of individuals, Brian LeBlanc, Dr. Chesson, and myself, along with Left Field, our OPM. As I told the board last week, we received 8 applications for the designer services. The subcommittee from the Florence Roach Building Committee, who's responsible to serve on with the state, part of that 13-member committee. We reviewed them, and we'll have our recommendations of some firms to the state. I will be in Boston next Tuesday for the meeting, and we'll determine next steps. Either they're going to do interviews or they're going to assign somebody to Groton. Once that's done, the architect gets on board. Now you're going to get into the serious work of the Florence Roach Elementary School. So that's moving forward. The library roof repair is underway. The staging is set up. I believe they're starting they're starting the actual installation of the roof next week, I think. It's all the staging is done.
Do you know what their completion date is?
It's contractually 3 months from the start date. They have 3 months to complete it. They'll probably
From the start date of the changing of the roofing or the start date of the putting of the scaffolding in?
Put the start date of the scaffolding. All that is like 3 months when I issue them the notice to proceed.
Can you just update these with an end date?
Sure.
When we,
Projected in.
yeah,
Yep.
just so that we have some feel for
Sure.
what we're shooting for.
And then on the highway garage renovations, last Tuesday morning, the building committee met out at the site with our engineers and everybody. I thought it was a great meeting. John was there representing the board, obviously, he's on the committee. That project is on schedule, set to be completed January 3rd. The contractor has been on site as of last Tuesday, so it's 48 days now, but 41 days as of last Tuesday, and they are doing a great job. The skin is up on the new building. The foundation just about is poured for the new building. So it's moving nicely, and there have been some change orders, which we expected. We've spent probably around, of the contingency, we've probably spent around, John, $60,000, give or take, on the
We've
contingency.
also got some back, so.
Yep,
Did the rerouting of that Verizon line that was in the way of the foundation of the new building occur?
they've boxed it and they're moving forward with it. Verizon engineer got a hold of us. They're gonna get that resolved, but it's not slowing up the project. That's the important thing. One of the things that we're debating right now, and we're gonna make a decision probably tomorrow, I have the building committee's authorization on this, is the old pit. We had originally considered keeping the old pit, but with OSHA regulations and everything, it may make sense to fill in that pit and purchase lifts instead. That's where we're debating that right now. So we're gonna try to figure out what the cost is on the lifts. Could be around $40,000, but that'll come out of the contingency. So we're trying to figure out if we're gonna do that or not.
Those are lifts that'll take a fully loaded dump truck?
Sure,
A fully loaded dump
Yes.
truck?
yes. Tom Delaney is investigating that as we speak.
That's a big lift.
It is a big lift. So that project's moving along very, very nicely. And that's all I have, Allison.
All right. Does anyone have any liaison reports? All right, then we have one set of minutes from August 26th.
One correction. Sorry I didn't get this to you, Don. I was here, I wasn't absent.
Any other corrections or changes? I would entertain a motion to approve as amended.
So moved.
Second then.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned.